It is Wednesday night in East Lansing. It is time for SpartanMag Live special signing day edition. It's Wednesday night, Michigan State. Signing day, just like all the other programs across the country. Good day for Michigan State today. Maybe surprisingly good. Come on in. We'll talk about it. You see the number. We'll have some guests today, hoping to get some old friends and some newer friends and all kinds of Michigan State fans here at SpartanMag.com. And I guess we're okay. I thought for a second there we might have been off, but we're all right. Running around a little bit. Had to find a few things. Sorry we're a little bit late. Come on in. We're going to talk about Michigan State's recruiting class today, early, the first day of the early signing period, basically known as the new signing day. Michigan State signing, 15, 16 players, still 3 more that they're still going to try to get between now and February. We'll talk a little bit about those and some of the surprises today, some of the good news. And no bad news today. Usually when there's signing day going on, there's some negative surprises, but not today. No negative surprises. Couple of good surprises. Those of you that follow Michigan State recruiting closely over at SpartanMag.com, you were
Corey.
You knew that some of the things that happened today were going to take place. And we're going to bring in Corey Robinson right now. Corey Robinson, the recruiting anchor for SpartanMag.com, has been doing such a great job covering Michigan State recruiting throughout this recruiting cycle and into last year. Getting a lot of help from Justin Thind, who's a great intern extraordinaire. We got Corey on the line right now. Paul Konerdijk, I don't know if we'll hear from him tonight. I didn't speak with him. He's busy with some other stuff. A lot of work today. Konerdijk doing a great job, among others. Michigan State, an eventful day, a good day. This gentleman right here we're about to bring in had a lot to do with cluing you in on some of the things that would happen throughout the course of the day, and his forecasts were accurate. Let's go out to Corey Robinson right now. Corey, how you doing, man?
No, I'm doing good. Just kind of taking some deep breaths after the wild day that is signing day.
Was a wild day, and as I was saying a moment ago, no major negative surprises for Michigan State. Michigan State fans that have been fans long enough, and probably fans of any football team, college football team across the country, have had nightmarish signing days. Michigan State's had a few of those. Nothing too terrible, but, just sometimes you think you're going to sign this player and that player, and then you get a negative surprise at the end. Michigan State signed all the players they expected to sign, and then Ma'anateote was out there as a surprise addition. Corey Robinson and Justin Thind did a great job telling Michigan State fans to keep an eye on those guys, and we've been talking about Ma'anateote on our at the message board at SpartanMag.com. And on the podcast last week, you and I recorded, I guess it was last weekend, and throughout the recruiting cycle, that one was a strong possibility for Michigan State. But Corey, until it happens, you don't know for sure. And today the press conference began at 12, and he had not signed yet. I was texting with you, and you said, it's going to happen. Just wait. And Tucker waited about 10 minutes before he started the press conference. I suspect Tucker thought that signature might have been already in, but it came in at about 1 o'clock. 4-star recruit, Ma'anateote. It happened, Corey, just like you said it would. No problem.
Yeah, definitely. With him, I knew that it was done just because I had quotes from him, and he didn't do a good job of asking for an edit last night, and I knew who did the edit, so I got to see that and all of that. So
okay, all right.
I knew it was coming, and then with him being a West Coast guy, it takes a little longer for those guys to sign. But I felt the same way because Tucker's press conference was supposed to be 11:30, and you could tell he was pushing it back to kind of let those last few guys sign before. But he ended up getting to talk about the Big Ten Network at least, so we were able to at least get his thoughts on him.
And we've talked about him for a few weeks, and now that he's signed, a punishing guy, a guy that's got some ruggedness to him. When I look at him, we'll just talk about Ma'anateote right now, a 4-star guy. His brother, a big-time 5-star guy that was at USC for a couple of years. We'll talk about him probably a little bit later. A lot about today is the coaches get a chance to talk about the recruits for the first time. Mel Tucker spoke about recruits for the first time, obviously the press conference. It's a Zoom press conference, so things move a little slower there. and there was an hour, and he had to go get in line for the Big Ten Network interviews. So, I was trying to get in line for a couple of follow-up questions, didn't get a chance to ask those. In previous years and non-COVID years, there have been times when we've had a chance to interview the position coaches after the main press conference, which can go for another hour, and we would usually have 3 or 4, sometimes 4 reporters around the room talking to assistant coaches about the players that had just signed, and got a little more detail on some of those, because we've been waiting for a year to hear what the coaches say about them. Today, of course, no assistant coaches. We're not there live. We're there via Zoom, and Mel Tucker was talking more about some big picture things. He spoke briefly about each recruit at the beginning of the press conference. He just quoted heights, weights, and statistics and things of that nature. But then later on, the Michigan State athletic department sent out a release with quotes. They had followed up with him and asked him about each recruit. And we got a little bit more, including we had some information about Nateote. Now, he spoke about Nateote during his Big Ten Network interview, and we have the story up over at SpartanMag.com on that. And those were some of the best quotes of the day from Mel Tucker. Tucker was a lot more himself and effervescent and engaging with the Big Ten Network interview, which only lasted 4 or 5 minutes, than he was with us on the Zoom. Things are comfortable on the Zoom, but it's not Tucker at his best, in my opinion. But his quotes about Nateote, he said he has really good size, build, and bulk. He's very instinctive and tough, Mel Tucker says about Nateote. He's the quarterback of the defense, and he plays with good balance and body control. He's got good burst to close, and he can anticipate, key in on, and diagnose the play. He is constantly one step ahead of the play. He will strike you and does a good job of finishing plays when he makes contact, shows he has 3-down value, and is good on the second level playing laterally. So that's pretty specific. We've seen head coaches at Michigan State come up to signing day over the years and provide some good insight here and there. But from a head coach point of view, some real specific stuff there that is good. I have to say, when I watched Nateote, I wasn't sure how fast he was. And I thought, this is a guy that might need to work on his speed at the college level. I thought his quickness was somewhere between Shane Jones and Greg Jones. Greg Jones had good speed early in his career, later in the career, kind of lost a little bit of it. And Shane Jones was never quite quick enough. And he was a 4-star guy out of Cincinnati Moeller. But Tucker saying he likes his burst to close. And the part I didn't know about Nateote is what he says about him constantly being one step ahead of the play. His ability to anticipate, key in, and diagnose a play. He's getting into the cerebral aspects of playing linebacker, something that when we see highlights, we might not get a great feel for that. That's something you need to watch an entire game, an entire team for extended amount of time. So I thought those were good, insightful quotes from Mel Tucker about Nateote, originally from California, correct, Corey?
Yeah, he was at Bosco, and then he, because of the coronavirus, he transferred over to Bishop Gorman, the powerhouse, but then they ended up not having a season either. But I think we mentioned it on the last podcast, even not playing there, but going to Bishop Gorman was huge just because they have a college-style weight room and strength coaches. So, and I'd mentioned how I'd be interested to see what his growth is. Obviously, I haven't seen him live like that, but I did notice in the press conference he's now up to 230, where I think before he was around 215. And I imagine that's a whole lot of really good muscle, so you might see a lot more explosion out of him than you already did see the next time you see him on the field.
And you've been speaking with him for the last several weeks. What have you learned about him as you've gotten to know him? And how difficult of a process was this? And were there any other schools in danger of knocking Michigan State off here late or earlier?
No, it was just Michigan State pretty much for a while. Colorado was there a little bit, but not ever a real threat. And then they disappeared the last couple months, and it was Michigan State. And as far as him as a person, he's just a really intense, confident person. So he'll bring a lot of that flair to the field and play with a lot of passion. I know we had the quotes on him where he said why he came to Michigan State was to play for Mel Tucker, and then to try and win the Big Ten, and that they already own Michigan, which that was a popular quote for Michigan State fans, and seemed to irk a few Wolverine fans that he said it. But he's the kind of guy that isn't going to talk. He's going to back it up, I think, with his intensity and just focus and drive.
What did you learn today, Corey, through the press conference and some of the comments from players and some of the tweets that they were sending out? What's your takeaway from today? And we will talk about Anthony Russo in a minute, the Michigan State quarterback transfer, graduate transfer coming in from Temple. That was probably the biggest news nugget of the day. We'll get into that in a minute. Aside from that, what's your takeaway from signing day thus far?
The big takeaways, I think, is what you said, where had it not been a game week, I think we would have gotten much more in-depth stuff from Michigan State, but they're trying to strike a balance between winning their game and talking about the recruits and doing that. So, that's something that they've never had to do, and probably hope that they never have to do again.
Right.
But I thought overall, Tucker did a pretty decent job of doing a quick run through due to the time constraints we had. And then the big thing with a lot of the football recruits that I think they did a really good job with as a staff, especially for not being able to spend time in person with the kids, is they were finding those kids that are football players that love football, and because a lot of the times those are the guys that will do the dirty work, whether it's in the weight room or they can be a step ahead in anticipating because they know what they're looking for. So I don't think while they were he talks about bodies and athleticism a lot, which obviously he recruits. But I think something that kind of separates him is his premium of figuring out what guys' passion is for the game and their knowledge of the game, because things like that translate over. Where I think the Antonio staff, they did a pretty good job of it, especially on the defensive side of the ball more so. But I think a handful of offensive linemen they got in the past weren't guys that necessarily loved football and doing the dirty work, and you kind of saw that on the field. So I think overall, offense and defense, they did a really good job of identifying football players.
All right, so Michigan State entered the day with a class ranked number 27 in the country by Rivals.com. After they received that commitment from Nateote, they moved up to number 23 in the country. That moved Michigan State class, for what it's worth, from number 8 or 9, I think, in the Big Ten up to number 5. And in an article earlier today at SpartanMag.com, I mentioned that in the Rivals.com rankings, you had Big Ten teams were ranked 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. I think there were 6 teams between Iowa and Minnesota. So the difference between being ranked number 28 in the country and 26 in the country, not much. But a lot of people coming into signing day this year and last year were, people that follow recruiting for 3 hours a year, and they start to, well, Michigan State's number 9 in the Big Ten in recruiting. That's terrible. But number 8 in the Big Ten, number 7 in the Big Ten, number 6 in the Big Ten were number 26, 25, 24, all scooped together, which really makes not much of a big difference. But Michigan State jumps up to number 5 in the Big Ten, which is a nice place to be with 19 commitments. Certainly, Corey, when this recruiting cycle began, when Mel Tucker was hired in February, getting off to a late start, especially with in-state recruits, I would not have thought a top 25 class was possible. Now, there's other outlets where Michigan State is ranked not as high as in the top 25, but we are a Rivals.com affiliate. And this year, Rivals.com has Michigan State number 23. It's worth talking about. I would not have anticipated this, especially not anticipated it on the strength of 2 4-star recruits from New Jersey, a 4-star recruit from Florida, and a 4-star recruit from California by way of Nevada. When Mel Tucker says he wants to recruit nationally, he certainly did. It's one thing to recruit nationally and go down to Florida and get some 2-star sleepers. It's a different thing when you go to Florida, New Jersey, and California and get 4 stars. And that's what enabled this class to be number 23 in the country in the Rivals.com rankings.
Yeah, and I think even because because I was watching the Big Ten Network signing show, and you would see a lot of the schools, obviously not Ohio State or Michigan and Penn State. They kind of followed the same model as Michigan State, where it was more all over the map that they were getting the talent, and the Big Ten Network actually picked that up, and we were talking about that just because Michigan State was such a predominant team in the Midwest prior. So I think they did as good of a job as you could hope with getting some late starts and playing major catch-up with some 21 in-state guys, and then also establishing their brand in areas that Michigan State doesn't routinely hit. So overall, if you ask them, they would probably want to have landed a few other guys that they didn't, and they're always going to be like that no matter what their class is like. But overall, I think you got to give them a good passing grade for the first year going through everything they went through.
They didn't lose a lot of recruiting battles. Andrell Anthony was one here locally, wide receiver. As of now, Michigan State with no wide receivers in the class, and it might finish that way. We can ask you a little bit about Keon Coleman here in a minute. By the way, if you're just joining us, we're speaking with Corey Robinson, recruiting anchor for SpartanMag.com. But in terms of like heartbreaking losses, there were a couple that got away in the summer. There was the Bay Air kid, the linebacker from New Jersey. There's the couple of decommitments. But this was a class that didn't have any of those really heartbreaking losses. Would you agree with that, or am I forgetting somebody?
Yeah, the only heartbreaking loss I think that I know that was a guy that they really, really wanted and that I think they needed was Mike Mizelinski from Florida, but now State has it. He's back available again, so that loss may be made up for. And like you said, there's guys that they would have liked to have that they didn't get, whether it's Bayer in New Jersey or Budden from Belleville, who he actually took a dip to a 3-star in the final rankings on Rivals.
Who took a dip?
Josh was saying.
Who took a dip?
Jamari Budden.
Yeah, he's down to number 15.
He went from a 4-star down to a 3.
Yeah, and he's number 15 or 16 in the state. I didn't see his senior film. That surprises me. I think he's a tank out there. I really liked his junior film after he committed to Penn State over Michigan State. I've not gone back to look at his senior film, but that surprises me a little bit. Did he talk about that a little bit, or where did you hear that? You just noticed that, or was it posted somewhere?
No, I knew it was coming ahead of time because I had spoken to Josh Helmholtz, the Midwest guy, and what his justification was is that he went to 2 or 3 Belleville games, and he thought the knock on Budden coming in to his senior year was not always being physical as he should be, where that's that full game tape shows you a little different than the highlight tapes. And the games that he went at, he said he almost looked like he was even less physical than he was as a junior, so that's why he was going to take him and knock him down, which so he had a justification for it ahead of time, and I had got a heads up about it, and I'm like, oh man, that's not going to go over well with some people, but yeah, he justified it, and I do know that was the knock coming in on Budden, because he looks the part, obviously, but sometimes it's a matter of putting it all together. And I imagine at Penn State, you get the intensity ramped up. Maybe he can become the guy that he was on course to become.
All right, looks like we got Justin Thin chiming in also. Justin, hey, it's finals week for you, engineering major. We have to get Justin on the horn here pretty soon so he can go back to studying. It's Justin Thin at SpartanMag.com. Intern, doing a great job in all areas. We're really glad to have him as part of the Spartan Mag family for sure. Corey, you mentioned Mike Mizelinski a little bit, and a lot of people watching might not know all the names in terms of recruiting, but Mike Mizelinski is a center from Jacksonville, Florida. Previously was an underrated 2-star recruit, has moved up to 3 stars in Rivals.com rankings, but he has offers from Florida. He's got all kinds of juicy offers, right? He committed to Texas, has offers from Oregon and Iowa, committed to Texas, was committed for a few months. Michigan State remained in contact with him and he's not signing with Texas today, decommitted last week or so. You and I talked about him on the SpartanMag.com Recruiting Wrap podcast a few days ago. Is there anything new with Mike Mizelinski? Is he still planning to sign in February? Do you think he might make a decision prior to that, or will it go all the way to the second signing day? What's anything new on Mike Mizelinski, the center from Jacksonville, Florida?
No, he's still planning on being a February signing guy. Not positive as far as if he'll announce ahead of time in January or if he'll wait till the end. He hasn't made that decision yet. But I think for him it comes down to Michigan State and Iowa most likely. That was probably Michigan State was number 2 the first time around, and Iowa was number 3. But those 3 teams definitely were well ahead of the others. But right now I have Michigan State in the lead for him just because of the relationship that he kept intact with Michigan State's offensive line coach, Chris Kapilovich, and just the amount of connections his dad, who's the head strength and conditioning guy, has of the Jacksonville Jaguars, has with countless members of the Michigan State staff. I think it's almost 5 or 6 guys on the Michigan State staff that have some form of overlap with Mizelinski's dad. So there's a lot of comfort there for the family, and a uncomfortable recruiting cycle with no visits.
And Mizelinski, was there any reason, did you just mention why he decommitted from Texas? Have we been over that, or is that something that's still on the sidelines for a little bit?
Yeah, he had backed off of Texas just because all the uncertainty of Tom Herman, their head coach, because he was kind of on the hot seat before, but then as a commit, he got to see the full force of the Texas fan base and administration, how sometimes they become their own worst enemies, where they publicly are going after other coaches. So they have a coach under contract, and then that coach turns them down. So then it's kind of an egg in your face moment. And a kid that's smart and comes from a football family has to, ask himself. So even if he survives and he's here next year for my freshman year, the chances that he's here my sophomore, junior, or senior year is really low. So obviously that you got to give kids a pause on going there, and that's what it was for Mizelinski.
All right. And if Michigan State were to get him, what do you think that would do for this class? Michigan State, I think, with 3 offensive line recruits at this time. They've got the Baldwin kid, the junior college transfer. Gino Vandermark has not signed yet, the 4-star from New Jersey. And then Ethan Boyd out of East Lansing, an offensive tackle. Michigan State's been recruiting Mizelinski all along, right? They've made him a plan A pretty much from the beginning. And they like him for a lot of reasons. What would that do to this class, Corey Robinson, if Michigan State were able to get Mizelinski? And do you think that'd be the final slot, or are they still in on Keon Coleman, the wide receiver from Louisiana?
No, I think he would be the final offensive line guy, most likely, assuming they signed Gino Vandermark to go along with Kevin Wigginton and Brandon Baldwin. Personally, I think what's his name, Vandermark, well, there's a strong possibility he'll sign Thursday or Friday, because guys have a couple more days to sign in the early period. Okay. That's not 100% set in stone, but there's talk that could still happen.
Why is Vandermark? Can you tell me why is Vandermark he's just not completely 100% sure? Why would he wait till Thursday, Friday? Any particular reason that he's given?
There's a couple teams that are talking to him. Rutgers, West Virginia, but I kind of feel like Michigan State is got a pretty comfortable lead, and I think they can get it done in the early signing period. And if not, I'd still expect him to be a part of the class. But obviously, you don't want guys lingering, but they should feel good where they're at right now with him.
Audric Estime, the running back out of New Jersey, top 200 player, one of the, I think, number 7 running back in the country. Big senior year. Notre Dame's after him now. Now with Donovan Edwards committing to Michigan over Notre Dame, do you think that'll intensify Notre Dame's pursuit of Audric Estime, or do you think it was 100% before that?
No, I think they knew that they probably weren't getting Edwards in the final days, so that's why they offered Estime. And then there's still some concern with Logan Diggs, their commit, who was offered by LSU, and now he's not signing until February. So the same thing with Gino. There is some discussions that Estime could either sign in February or he could sign in the next 2 days. But if it was the next 2 days, I don't think that would be with Michigan State. That would most likely be with Notre Dame. So I think for Michigan State, unless they know something I don't know, they want him to drag it out to February to keep fighting the fight with him, because I think right now Notre Dame's got all of the momentum in that recruitment.
Why do you think Notre Dame has all the momentum, and why do you think time would be on Michigan State's side the longer that it goes? I thought that his quotes in the Rivals.com article this week were kind of good for Michigan State when he said, there's trust between myself and the coaches, and they weren't the usual run-of-the-mill, I'm still committed now. They were lengthy quotes. I'm not saying you're wrong by any means, but why do you think Notre Dame has all the momentum right now with Audric Estime? We're seeing his video right now.
That's a school that he didn't hide his desire to get that offer. And generally when guys do that, there's a reason for it, because if you're committed, you're not hoping to get an offer from someone else. And then the Catholic school connection, and he recognizes their offensive line being maybe the best in the country, so that's appealing to a running back. But and then I know, speaking of Notre Dame people, they're very confident in their chances.
Okay, that's Estime. That's his video right there. That's some of his junior film. He was even quicker and more explosive this year. I wasn't sure he had that top end high gear speed, but he showed it this year. Excuse me, going against good competition in New Jersey. He was continually, if he broke through and got into the open, he was outrunning defensive backs against good teams, over and over. I remember back in the old days, people would talk about how Emmitt Smith didn't have that extra gear, but when he was younger, no one ever seemed to catch him. But Estime moved up in the rankings. Michigan State needs to hold on to him if they want to hold on to a top 25 recruiting class. It's going to be really interesting. This is an interesting test for Mel Tucker also. Tucker says, hey, we are going to recruit like maniacs. That was his quote after the Penn State game on Saturday. Tucker's putting more energy. I don't want to say energy, because a lot of coaches put a lot of energy into recruiting, but I don't want to say more emphasis either. But I don't know. It's harder to emphasize recruiting more than Tucker has since he's gotten here, and he continues to emphasize it. I guess I'll go ahead and say it. He's ramped it up. He is more on recruiting every single day of the year than other coaches have been. And now he's a consummate salesman in a lot of ways. Everybody knows that he used to sell steaks and chicken and food out of a truck after he graduated from college to begin with, out of Wisconsin, before he got into coaching. He's a salesperson. And when he was at Georgia, he was ranked among the top 20 recruiters in the country when he was defensive coordinator there. He knows that's the lifeblood of the program. He has big goals, and he knows in order to achieve those goals, he wants to recruit like close to what they did when he was at the staff at Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama. I'm not sure it's true. I'm not sure it's possible. I'm not sure it's impossible, but that's what he's going for. Long story short, he's an energetic recruiter. He says he wants to recruit like maniacs. He's a salesperson. He's trying to hold on to this running back. We will learn something about Tucker. A lot of people seeing Michigan State as the underdog to hold on to him. If they are able to do it, that'll tell us a lot about Michigan State's recruiting strength going forward. A really interesting test here against a blue blood that happens to be undefeated right now. But Tucker, I don't know. Things went pretty well so far today. And he's going to be clawing and kicking and screaming and touching back on those relationships that they've established with Estime. And you saw that in the quotes with Estime at Rivals.com when he said, Michigan State's telling me that they've been with me the longest and that I was always their number one guy. So Michigan State is telling them, hey, you're in our family now. You've always been our guy. That's the angle Michigan State's using, and it's a big prize in Audric Estime. If you bring Audric Estime in as a freshman next year in 2021, the combination of Jordan Simmons and Estime would be an excellent 1-2 running back punch. I think he would play right away. I think he could make a big impact right away, and those would be the two going forward. Corey, your thoughts about that before we move on to some other topics?
Yeah, definitely. So if he was to go to Notre Dame, that'd definitely not be anything that Mel Tucker and Rolling Max coach William Piegler and the whole staff didn't do. I mean, at some point, the kid's going to make a decision that the kid's going to make, but there's nothing left on the table that they couldn't have done, that they would be sitting back and saying, oh, we should have did this or whatever. Sometimes with recruiting, but they're going to fight until he signs, whether it's at Michigan State or Notre Dame. So there's no question on the effort part of it, and I agree with you too. It would be beneficial for him if he came to Michigan State, because the 1-2 punch and the difference between Jordan Simmons and him, like he would absolutely play as a true freshman and probably at least split the bulk of the snaps with Jordan Simmons as a two-headed monster.
All right. Also, something else I wanted to say about Mike Mizelinski. I think he deserves that 3-star status. I think he's excellent. He's quick, very quick, if Michigan State can get him the kid out of Jacksonville. You know, I look at some of the other recruits around the state, like Raheem Anderson for Detroit Cass Tech. He's a 4-star, ranked number 7 in the state of Michigan, signed with Michigan today. Looked at his senior film today. Pretty good, quick, gets out, and is able to seal, move his feet and seal, and he's a good center. But I don't see a lot of difference between 4-star Raheem Anderson and previously a 2-star in Mike Mizelinski. That's just my opinion. Other people have other opinions. That's fine. I'm not saying anyone's right or wrong. But that difference right there can really increase the stock of a particular recruiting class. Meanwhile, at the center position, Michigan State with a walk-on. Logan Murray from Flint Powers, he announced that he was committing to Michigan State as a walk-on back in the summer. And frankly, Corey, I forgot about him until he tweeted out today and showed that he was signing his preferred walk-on tender, and you retweeted it. I was like, I forgot about that guy. That guy's film was good too. And I've not gone back to look at his senior film, but I think that's a good walk-on to have. Walk-ons seem the most likely to get into a playing group on the offensive line maybe than other positions. Maybe fullback if you have a fullback, maybe tight end. But, 6'2", 295, if you're going to be a walk-on, that means that other programs they see some defect in you. There's a reason he doesn't have an offer. He's 6'2", he's not the tallest guy in the world, but, man, he's got some excellent, dominant high school film. That's a good preferred walk-on right there. I want to say thanks to Tom Kelly for hitting the personal sponsorship. Thank you to Tom. Appreciate it. And as far as the quarterback, let's talk about him now. Anthony Russo from Temple. Grad transfer, announced a couple of weeks ago that he was going to grad transfer somewhere, and people on our message board were wondering, could he be a Michigan State guy? I was talking to a guy in Temple a couple of weeks ago, a little bit about it, but I didn't think anything was happening until, boom, you let me know today that this thing was happening. So that gave me some heads up to do a little research and watch him a little bit. Meanwhile, you and Justin had it. Justin Thin put the story up. Anthony Russo, a lot of yardage, 3-year starter at Temple, has had some big games. He's thrown a lot of touchdowns, a lot of interceptions, a lot of talent. I think we may speak with some other people tonight about him. But your thoughts about how all that came down and Michigan State adding a grad transfer to the quarterback picture?
Yeah, I found out maybe 3 hours before he announced, 2.5, 3 hours. So then I had messaged you and Justin. I asked Justin, since he had did the earlier article on him and had the stats and everything fresh in his head, if he wanted to do it. So he picked that article up for us and did a good job putting that out there. And we, I think we're the only outlet that had any clue about it. Everyone else had to play catch up after he tweeted it out. So that's always fun when we can do that with recruits or grad transfers. As far as on the field, I was kind of like you too. I knew they were looking at him, and they were looking at him heavily. They had the whole staff following him, but I didn't know that if I would get to this point. So then I had to do a lot of research on him to kind of figure out what the numbers were. Watch the film, where you turn on the film and he shows great touch. He's putting the ball where it needs to be, but that's a highlight film. So then you're like, hey, so where's the interceptions coming from? So I had reached out to some Temple people as well and kind of asked them, and he was telling me that they had 4 offensive coordinators there, 2 head coaches. So he was constantly learning a new offense or play calls. And then he was a recruit of Matt Rule, who kind of would use the tight end set, the fullbacks, kind of that pro style attack, not read option, where the new staff at Temple was not necessarily running the offense that he's built to run. They're trying RPO stuff, and while he can move a little bit, he's clearly not a read option quarterback. He's a pro style guy. So I think scheme, the amount of changes, and then he's got some gunslinger in him where, due to the fact that he can make all of the throws, he trusts his arm a little too much. So that's what Jay Johnson and the staff is going to have to rein in with him, is to teach him, we got to manage the game. If we don't turn the ball over, then we're probably going to win a lot more games than we lose. So if he was to beat out Peyton Thorne for the job next year, then that was the one area that they'll have to rein in with him. And then him being graduated already and a grad transfer, I would assume he would be on campus for winter conditioning and spring ball and all that to get a head start on the playbook. Yeah. No. He's going to announce a top 8 in the next couple of days sometime, and then a February 3rd decision. So he's not necessarily zeroed in on a whole lot yet. He's kind of enjoying the process, but Michigan State is definitely a team that will be in that top group, I think, for him, and they have a real strong shot with him. They've made him priority 1 since they offered him way back in the summer, and even when he was committed to Kansas for a while there, they never stopped talking to him, same as Mizelinski. So I expect Michigan State to definitely be there in the recruitment for him. He's watching the Michigan State games. He's wearing Michigan State hoodies a lot and posting it on his Instagrams and all of that. So there's a lot of the key things that you're looking for, because guys can say a lot of stuff, but if you kind of have the ability to watch what they're doing. So when he's talking about things that happen in the game, that kind of shows you that he really is watching the game and not just saying he is, and then wearing the clothes and stuff. So I definitely think faith in it, but it's also got a lot of recruitment left to go with him, I think. Nobody else can. For next, I think for Michigan State after today's signing day is, I think there's a huge importance for Michigan State to secure the commitments of Gino Vandemark and Rayshon Benny. I think Michigan State's doing good in both of those recruitments. I know there's some talk of Michigan getting involved with Rayshon Benny, but I don't feel like that's too serious at this point, and I think that Michigan State will hold on to Benny. I think they'll hold on to Vandemark. Then obviously Estime, I think that one's going the wrong way. We talked about Mizelinski. He's a top target. Keon Coleman's a top target. And I think Michigan State could still look to add a defensive end, Davon Townley out of Minnesota. He announced yesterday evening that he wasn't going to sign. He's got a top 4 group of Minnesota, Michigan State, Arizona State, and Penn State. Minnesota was the perceived favorite for a long time, but there's clearly a reason he's not going and signing there. Arizona State's got some momentum there. Michigan State has been working on him for a couple months, trying to get him on campus. So they could get him on campus, I think they got a shot there. He's, I think, 6'7", 6'6", around 220, good complete, every down defensive end that could rush the passer and defend the run. And then they missed on Josh Moore today. He chose UCLA, the safety out of Georgia. So I imagine they still may be semi-active looking for another safety if they can find the right fit. And then after that, it's just kind of just looking around and seeing what's out there. I imagine if they were to lose Estime, they could make a move on some other running backs that they've been tracking that might have not signed in December. But right now, they're just putting all their focus and mindset on keeping Estime.
Like you said, there's some Michigan fans thinking that Rayshawn Benny might still be in play. You mentioned a few minutes ago that you don't think that'll be the case. What's your read on that one? He's deciding till February. Is that reason for concern?
I mean, like I said, you never want guys hanging out there, especially in February once more staff can zero in on the good pieces that are left out there. But everything I've heard, he's recruiting for Michigan State still. He's got his best friend, Davion Prim, just signed today. And he's just kind of a different kid that he's a smart kid and he understands that I'm not early enrolling. So there's not a whole lot of reason that I have to sign in December. So for me, I think he's just doing it because he's his own person type of feel is what I get out of it. But I definitely like where Michigan State's at with him still.
Greg Hughes just posted, he says, do we really need 6 defensive backs in the class? There's a lot of defensive backs. You know, Tucker was talking about it today, saying how important it is. Every position is important. But, you know, Michigan State, when they went after Josh Moore, didn't get him. That would have been the 6th. But we said at least I said on the podcast a couple of days ago that he was that impressive that even though it's a crowded space, he would be a take. He would be one of the rare people that would be a take. I'm not saying that's the official word, but when I looked at his film, I'm like, okay, I see what they're talking about now. I think they ended up with 5 defensive backs, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, they'll take 6 if they can get 6 good ones, because you also got to factor in they're starting 5 defensive backs on their defense. So, you know, that's a big chunk of your defense right there. And then you have some losses where Shakir Brown to the NFL, Chris Jackson was announced that he's up in the air. I'm not totally positive what's going on with that because they said he's not with the team for this season, but we'll talk about it later. So the word season doesn't mean he's necessarily gone for next year. So there's some uncertainty there. And then you got Julian Barnett who transferred out. So, I mean, you're getting some holes that you weren't necessarily planning on having at the point that they were still looking for 5 or 6 defensive backs. So, and Tucker talked about wanting to get to the point where on the for sure passing down type of things where they can go to a 6 defensive back set. So obviously it sounds like a high number, but when you're putting 5 guys out there every snap, then it's not so high of a number. And you had to improve, I think, length and speed in the defensive backfield at a few spots. Had a few guys that seem to be on the wrong side of the highlight reel more times than the others. So there's some positions up for grabs, I would think, if they can get their guys in here and ready to go. Like you look at today, we found out A.J. Kirk, the hard-hitting safety from Ohio, is an early enrollee, along with Gravely. So those guys could both use that time, and they have the talent and mindsets already because they're both highly intelligent players that they could see the field early next year. And Charles Brantley out of Florida would be the same, although he's not an early enrollee, but he's a kid that's well ahead of the curve mentally, and he just knows how to cover.
All right, getting back to what you were saying about Christian Jackson a minute ago. It's my understanding, he's just kind of contemplating his future in general in football. He's had a couple of injuries this year. It's been a difficult season. And one of the things I posted on the message board is, some of these guys just need to get home, get some mom's meatloaf, eat, chill for a while, get away from the game. They've been here since June. Very intense circumstances, competing as a football team, not knowing if you're playing, then you are, then you aren't, then you are, and you're competing with your teammates for playing time. And then there's, some really high highs and a couple of blowout losses and injuries. And, like Mike Krzyzewski was talking about, there's mental health concerns on his team. And there are, there's psychological things all over the country. So right now, it's my understanding Christian Jackson is just not sure if he's, if he wants to continue playing, pretty much. So a lot of people were wondering, oh, he must have gotten in trouble or this or that. No, he didn't get in trouble, but then that's why Mel Tucker is giving him space. So that's my understanding of what's going on there. So, and that's part of it.
Another thing to add to you is just like they didn't get to go home for the holidays.
Absolutely.
They haven't been able to go home forever. Now their parents can't come to the game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's tough for the kids because
really tough.
I don't think everybody fully understands how big of a sacrifice these athletes are taking to have made the season get to the point where it is.
Big sacrifice.
Basically,
and then they're
sacrifice their families and friends.
And then they're told, not to mix with anyone else other than your roommates. Can you imagine that? You've got the same 3 or 4 roommates since June, and they don't want you mixing with anyone else. And that's tough. Yeah. They've been under so much strain. That's why you're seeing, these teams like Pittsburgh, Boston College, Virginia saying they don't want to play in bowl games. And I suspect if you polled Michigan State's team, if Michigan State beats Maryland and gets to, 3-5, and gets invited to a bowl game, Tucker says that he wants to go and he wants the practices in another game. But, I mean, I'm not the coach, I don't know, but I'm not sure that would be advantageous or productive. Let me go ahead and move on, Corey. I really appreciate all of your insight and everything you do for SpartanMag.com and your great coverage. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Corey.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right, you take care.
Call from
Nils Deco.
To accept.
All right, let's go out to our friend Nils Deco, formerly of the Horn in Austin, Texas. He follows Michigan State very astutely. He's got some insight on the quarterback situation with Anthony Russo coming in. I don't know if that's what he wants to talk about right off the shoot. But Nils Deco from Houston, Texas. What's going on, Nils?
I was just dreaming of that other guy from USC to transfer. That's what I've been thinking about today. That's the guy I want. How do you say that guy's name?
I don't know. It's Felier or something like that. Nateote is the last name. I apologize.
That's painful.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And he plays a painful game also.
Oh, my God. He had a Percy Snow-like hit on that video that you guys posted on the site. I mean, the one where he knocked himself out, I really think he's the Polynesian version of Percy Snow. I really think he is.
Palier. It's Palier now Teote. For those that don't know, he is looking to transfer from USC, and Michigan State's right in the middle of it because Michigan State, among other things, just signed his younger brother. He's going to be a freshman at Michigan State next year. Originally from California, was a 5-star recruit, legitimate top 30 player in the country, 6.1 on the Rivals rating scale, went to USC. If you look at his highlights from his freshman year and half of this year, he has some highlights that are uncommon. Big guy at about, he's like 6'3.5", 250, 6'2", 250. 250 is big for a linebacker, but he can move. And when he's running the alley and cuts to go north, I mean, it's one step and north at a right angle. Economical with his footwork. He doesn't come apart when he turns a corner. It's sports car at 240 and then hits like a truck. When I saw it, the first thing I did is I looked at his video and I'm like, man, and I was like, I wonder where this guy was ranked because I didn't know a whole lot about him. Looked it up, sure enough, 5-star. I'm like, yeah, that's what he looked like for USC. So why does he want to leave USC? That's not really clear, but he is. And Michigan State has immediate playing time available at linebacker because Antoine Simmons is not going to be coming back. You've got Noah Harvey there. You've got his brother on campus. I would think Michigan State would be right in the middle of it. The only misgiving there is when you've got someone of that magnitude that's looking to go to another program, how much is he chasing, like college football playoff, national championship, Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. And for obvious reasons, Michigan State would have a lot of trouble measuring up to that. but they've got the brother. So, and there's playing time immediately also.
Well, I mean, you just talk about something, how you change the whole program. You bring a guy like him, I mean, everything changes. Maybe a defensive end that can rush the passer that Michigan State lacks right now. I think, someone like him that's a difference maker, and maybe you make him, if they're running the 4-2-5, you make him a, third down defensive pass rush specialist, because it seems like to me he could rush the passer. I mean, there's not much that kid can't do from the video I saw. So hopefully his brother's like 80% as good, because then we've got probably a linebacker that's probably almost as good as Simmons as when he steps on campus.
Right. All right. I know you've got some contacts that used to coach at Temple. Are you comfortable talking about that?
Yeah. I mean, I had a good conversation with my friend, and he's a big believer in Russo. He said, when I sent him the text, he said he didn't realize that Russo had committed to Michigan State. He said late round draft pick. So I'm like, well, that's good. Because, I mean, if you're a late round draft pick, and Weezahan, I shouldn't say his name, but he's probably one of the better evaluators. And I know everyone thinks I'm full of it, but I've known this guy since 1990. His evaluation, if you ask Deion Dawkins, look up the name Deion Dawkins of the Buffalo Bills, who's the captain there, mention his name, and he'll tell you he's the reason he's in the NFL as a captain of the Buffalo Bills. This guy knows talent, hard worker. He says Russo, if he can be protected, can make a difference. As long as he's protected, Michigan State's in great shape. So the guy's got a hose for the arm.
And I see the arm, for sure.
He's from Pennsylvania. How much better can it get from that?
Just like your boy Jeff Smoker.
I'm gonna give you two Pennsylvania quarterbacks at Michigan State, right?
Jody Dickerson. Jody Dickerson.
Not Mario Bongiorni. I'm giving you Eddie Smith, and I'm giving you Jeff Smoker. So in my opinion, they're probably two of the top 5 quarterbacks we've ever had, and they're both from the great state of Pennsylvania. You can't lose the Pennsylvania quarterback.
There is no secret that Pennsylvania for a long time, especially Western PA, was the cradle of quarterbacks there for a while. Let me get my picture out of the way. I don't know if people can see this or not, but got running film of Russo right now. Compact arm circle, compact throwing motion. You're an old quarterback guru, Nils Deckau. You were at the George.
I'm not a guru by any means.
You tried out as a quarterback recruit at the George Perlis camp back in 1989, and they told you to go to Wabash College. Right?
That's before I never grew.
That's better. Hey, that's way better than I am. But you look at the throwing motions and stuff. Have you looked at his film?
Yeah, I mean, I watched him play because when my buddy was a coach there, when the kid was a freshman, he was still there in Matt Rule's last year. I mean, the kid was a winner as a freshman. I mean, the kid did a good job, and that was that year that got Matt Rule the job at Baylor. So, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, he was a quarterback at Temple when Matt Rule had that big year. Am I wrong?
Yeah, the year they went 8-5. Oh, the year when they played Notre Dame in the big showdown, or they were 8-5 2 years ago, but that was first year with the new coach.
No, the year that Matt Rule was, I think Matt Rule's last year at Temple. I think Russo was the quarterback.
Yeah, he was. Yes, that's right. 'Cause he's a 3-year starter, sophomore, junior, and then this year, and he's been 2 years with Carey, the current coach, and he was starter as a sophomore. Rules last year, correct? And
yep.
I mean, big numbers. That year he threw 14 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, threw for 2,500 yards. The next year in 2019, 21 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 2,800 yards. And then this year, he'd throw 9 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, was hurt 3 games into the season. Russo quarterbacked them last year to an 8-5 record with Rod Carey in his first year. Rod Carey came in from Northern Illinois to take over for after Collins left, after Jeff Collins left to go to Georgia Tech. And
okay, so I'm wrong then. So he didn't play. He redshirted in Rules last year. My bad.
Okay, all right, but the first thing that your contact said, who coached at Temple, was he sees him as a late round draft choice, just on the arm talent.
Yep.
I mean, he's got some footwork too. I mean, when he tucks the ball and runs the zone read option, they don't do it a lot, but he's capable when he does it. And he's
235 pounds.
Oh,
though.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yes.
In the modern day game, I think that's what you want. You want that 235, and you don't even care if the guy, if he translates to the NFL, because you need to have a guy in the college game that can maybe run for 60 or 70 yards and throw for 240, 250 yards, and maybe eat up 34, 35 minutes of clock. And, as Mel Tuck would say, plays complementary football, and that's the key. But can you do both? That's, I think, been the issue with Michigan State this past year, is that they didn't have both, and in the modern day game, I mean, you look what Justin Fields did at Michigan State. I mean, that guy ran for over 100 yards in like 5 minutes. I mean, you've got to have a guy, because it's a natural mismatch. It's 11 on 10 when you have a quarterback that can run the ball.
That's right. You get a +1. And the numbers this year against Memphis, in one game, he was 41 out of 63 for 392 with 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. They lost 41-29. And these highlights, and a lot of talent, everybody can see that. I'm looking for a highlight where he looks someone off and goes to the other side of the field. So I want to go through and look at some of those games and see what happened with some of the interceptions, what can be done to pare that down a little bit. Corey Robinson spoke with someone who covers Temple today, and he said, one of the things, like he talked about earlier in the show, is sometimes he trusts his arm too much. And sometimes that'll happen with a guy with a lot of arm talent that's just trying to carry a team. We saw that with Kirk Cousins early in his career, especially when he was a sophomore. As soon as the team got down by 10 points, that's when Kirk Cousins would try to throw it through a wall. He never had these type of interception numbers, but they weren't throwing it as much. But excellent ability. That's for sure. Hey, Nils, I'm going to let you go. That sound good, man?
That's fantastic.
Thanks a lot. There goes Nils Deco.
Call from
Ron Armstrong.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
All right, now we're going to bring in our very good friend Ron Armstrong, otherwise known as Big Mooby, on the SpartanMag.com website, our web community. Ron Armstrong was a defensive back at Michigan State back in the George Perles days in the early 1990s. Ron, Big Mooby, you're on the air right now. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Happy signing day.
Happy signing day. Hope everybody got their shopping done in time for signing day. Happy signing day for Michigan State. No cruel surprises. No coal in the stocking. A couple of positive surprises. Number 3 ranked recruiting class in the country. I never would have forecast that back in the spring when he was just getting started, Ron. And he did it. He's got, Benny is a big-timer 100 out of Oak Park, Michigan. And I really like those underrated defensive backs from Ohio. But for the most part, he's got a top 23 class without, huge numbers close to home. That's not the easy way to do it.
No, I mean, all in all, I mean, I like the class from, and I'm not big into recruiting rankings and stuff like that. I kind of try to look at football players playing football, like film, and then try to project that out with their body types and how well they'll be able to, build upon that to the next level. And one thing I noticed is that just not the size and numbers, but the actual physical size of our recruits, I really like. I think you're going to look at these kids and in the next couple year or so, we'll look like, a Big Ten football team is supposed to look, not a bunch of undersized guys, especially up front. I like the length of our defensive backs. So, I mean, I think it's a good class. I mean, and it's exceptionally, I think it's if you look at all the things that Coach Tucker and his staff could have used as an excuse not to recruit this well and to bring in this, this solid of a class, they didn't do that. They went out and they pounded the pavement, and they, like Coach Tucker talked about, they embraced the Zoom aspect of recruiting. And I really do believe that some of the stuff they did in the spring, embracing that a bit earlier than everybody else, paid dividends, because I think they had the virtual tours down, a good, month ahead of what a lot of programs were doing, anticipating things opening back up. So I think, all in all, I think they did a really good job, and some good football players coming in. It's going to, I think if you look at a class, I think the hit rate is one of those things you want to judge, but also something else you look at is how many of these kids are going to actually be starters for you and come in and contribute. And I think there's a good chance of a lot of these guys coming in and contributing right away.
Who do you have your eye on that could come in and contribute or start right away? Have you had a chance to really? I'm sure you've looked at a lot of them. Go ahead.
I like the defensive backs, mainly because there's going to be opportunity for those guys to play.
Yeah.
But if you look at, especially kids that that come well coached. Some, you know, you get some athletes that need fine tuning with their technique, they're going to be a bit behind the change. But when you get some of these kids from good programs, and you know, Angelo Gross type kid, he came from a good program where he's well coached and he's ready to go. I think some of these defensive backs are, you know, they're going to come ready, and they'll have an opportunity to play early.
I posted this question to you, and you answered it over at the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com earlier today. But in looking at the film of the defensive backs, it struck me the hitting ability with these guys. There's always good hitters that they sign, right? But I don't remember a class with 3 guys that can hit. A.J. Kirk, plus hitter at safety, and Michael Gravely, a plus hitter at corner that's got the size and the hitting ability. He can move to safety. And then Charles Brantley, you know, Herb Haygood's second cousin, actually, for a corner. I mean, there's some video of him this season, you know, lighting people up and not going out of their way to do it, you know, maintaining proper leverage, just natural hitters out there. Kirk, Gravely, Brantley. I'm like, when did Michigan State has Michigan State ever had a class with hitters like this? Now, they don't have hitters like Ron Armstrong coming out of Jackson, Michigan. They don't have anyone like that.
No, man. My shoulders were like the word Deion, in the words of Deion Sanders, my shoulders were for holding up suit jackets.
Okay. That's better than me.
You know what? Listen,
that's better than me. Go ahead.
Those guys. I tell you what. When you look at watch film, you see guys hit. There's a difference between going, you know, flying up there and your technique isn't proper and you just kind of, you know, closing your eyes and you're swinging for the downs. These guys are coming up and they're fitting guys up properly, and they're getting guys on the ground, you know, and getting in the huddle. And those are the things that you can see can translate to the next level. When I just see guys going up there blowing up high school kids, you can't do that in the Big Ten and not have a healthy long career. But you can fit guys up properly and get guys on the ground. So if you're evaluating your defensive backs, especially the corner position, you want willing tacklers. And you want guys that are willing to put their face in the fan and get guys on the ground and get in the huddle. And now if they're physical and they're big hitters, that's a bonus. But when I look at these 3 kids, they're willing tacklers, they're physical, and that's the kind of stuff that gets you in the rotation in a hurry. You know, if coaches know and your teammates know that when the ball comes your way or you got to set the edge, you're going to be firm over there. You know, you're a step ahead of the game.
Do you have a favorite in that defensive back class that signed today?
I like Brantley because I like corners that just love playing ball. And if you got a corner that could just get after it, it can raise the game. It can raise corner. If you got a corner that can cover,
man,
that's like in a DN that can rush the passer. Your defense is 7 to 10 points better right there.
And
you want to come in and change it.
Go ahead.
You want to come in and change the defense. Get a corner out there that can cover, and you know, and he can cover for 3.2 seconds. And now you're looking at your defense getting better.
And Brantley's a legit 4-star. I mean, you've seen him.
Yes.
He can run, cover.
Yes, he's legit.
And dynamic guy.
That kid, and I don't like putting, you know, a lot of pressure on guys and stuff like that, but I like the way that kid's film. He looks the part, but he brings that right attitude that, you know, he wants to compete.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Kirk is going to enroll early, so, you know, that definitely bodes well for him, you know, getting in the rotation, and just some rumblings about some, you know, opportunities in the secondary.
Yeah.
You know, those young guys, man, I would imagine that's been communicated to them that, you know, they need to have a big spring at home to come ready, you know, to start preparing themselves to be ready to play, because there's going to be definitely some opportunities there to get on the field. And real quickly, I usually don't talk about linemen much, but I do like the fact that we're bringing in big body guys. You know, if you look at, you know, the theme across borders, big body guys, but they're guys that are carrying the weight well. Like if you I don't know if you looked at Ethan Boyd, but that kid looks like he's 275.
But he's actually what, 299?
He's probably 290, 300. I mean, he's carrying that weight so well. Like he could play a 315 and not be stressed. And And that's what you want. You want a guy carrying a weight that he can play and not be stressed at and not risk injuries and things like that.
And Ethan Boyd, looking at his film, I kept looking for his lateral movement. He might need to quicken up those feet a little bit. And you've seen him. You've been on the practice field with him. You're close to that East Lansing program, right? You've seen his feet, I would imagine, right?
Yep.
How do they look?
Yes. I'll tell you. Here's the thing, though. I'm gonna tell you something. Okay. This is one of the common mistakes that's made with really big guys. Taking a really big guy and worrying about how quick he is. I'm more worried when I see big guys that take small, choppy steps. If he's a big guy, he's not heavy. I don't want heavy feet. You can't have heavy feet. But you need just some requisite quickness. But do you cover ground? Because he's a big guy, and as long as he's covering ground, I don't need him to be, a ballet dancer. Mm-hmm. I just, so you got a 6'7" guy out there. Let him be 6'7". Get him a wide base, and let him be 6'7", use those long arms and make the guy run the team.
And when I've not seen, I keep looking for past pro film on him and having trouble finding it. And there were no t-shirt camps this summer. Big guy, big square body guy. You've been on the field with him. You know better than I do for sure. The feet, I kept looking for it. A lot of the highlights are run blocking, and he's a brute out there. He's handling the business. There's one thing.
Here's the thing too. You. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just before you get to that, one thing about what he does in pass protection that I saw, I think against River Rouge or Waverly or somebody, defensive lineman was going to put his hands on him, maybe long arm or something. Actually had two hands out, and Boyd just chops both hands downward with such force that the dude just face planted just from getting wrist clubbed. Boom. And he did it a couple of times. When he hits people, there's some freakazoid power in that guy also, in addition to the size. Well, that's where the power comes from. But, looking for the quickness and everything. But in the meantime, I'm seeing him just touch people and they crumble. Now, he's going against decent competition.
And again, that's what you want.
Yeah.
That's what you want when you have big guys. I mean, just be, listen, I get it sometimes, and coaches are, we all see a guy, well, he needs to be a little bit quicker. And that's going to come. Some of that is playing with the proper technique and things like that. Working on you're getting a better stance, so you have a better base, so you play a little bit lighter on your feet. But you don't recruit a guy that's 6'7", 315, and then want him to play like a little guy. Get that guy out there and let him be, let him play big, and let him use his size, to just overpower people. And I think we're getting to the point where we're going to have some linemen that will look like Big Ten linemen.
And then, and with Ethan Boyd out of East Lansing, this staff didn't waste much time. They got in, they got hired.
No.
They set up, they were, before the furniture was set up, they were going through film, liked that guy, offered that guy, got him by April, right?
Yep. Yes.
So it's not like they had their eye on him all year, didn't know, lost a couple of guys, and then, backtracked on him. They made him a plan A early.
And here's the thing. First of all, the kid's a good football player, but you can't have a Big Ten size offensive lineman across the street from you and not do your due diligence. Like, that guy can't leave town.
And that's smart. I mean, it's smart that's a guy you look at first, right? I mean, you put him at the top of the list.
Absolutely.
Because you don't want Iowa coming in.
You can. Yeah, exactly. You don't want Iowa. You don't want Wisconsin. You want to start. And look, you can find if you bring in a 6'2" receiver and you whiff on him. Do you know how many 6'2", 175 receivers there are?
Well, there's a lot of them.
Like, you'll trip over those guys on your way to see 6'4" receivers.
Yeah. But
there's not a lot of 6'7", 300-pound body types on this planet. So when there's one across the street, you got to go get that guy.
Right. And he was across the street.
I like the class.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That's a big get. I like the class. Look, give me, there were some things, some needs we filled. The linebacker position, I do think, getting the kid to flip was a big deal. So, look, it's a good job. It's a good job by the staff, and I think it's only going to get better with the 21 kids in the state of Michigan. I mean, the 22 kids in the state of Michigan. But you can see that they had some recruiting connections out of region that pay dividends this go around.
Mm-hmm. And I like I asked Mel Tucker about today about the way that he's using assistant coaches where they are their own recruiting contact. If you're the offensive line coach, you're recruiting. You are the primary contact for all offensive linemen that you're recruiting. Now go get them. And, DiNardo was talking about that last night. That's the way Urban Meyer did it. And I tried to ask Tucker if that's something that he picked up along the way. And he didn't really say where he got it from. He says that that's kind of the way it's been for the last 6 or 7 years. And that might be the way it's been for the last 6 or 7 years where he's coached, but it's never been that way at Michigan State. At Michigan State, as you know, somebody will have a portion of the country, a portion of the state, maybe a portion of Ohio. And if they see somebody, if you're the linebackers coach and you see a wide receiver, he checks your checklist and then you pass it off to the receivers coach and then goes from there. Whereas this, it might cost more money in the recruiting budget. It might cost more time. I don't know how the time thing will but I'm guessing that's the way it was done at Alabama and Georgia, because that's the way he's doing it here. And a lot of what he's doing here, it's emulated from other places that he thinks is tried and true. I asked him about it today, and I'd have to go back and listen to it again. I'm not sure I got the exact answer and clarification on it, but it's different, it's new, and I think it's it's interesting. I think it's intriguing, and I think it can be more effective. And you get Michigan State recruiting like that.
I prefer that. I mean, I think if you and here's why. There's things that a lineman will see about linemen, just nuance. A lineman coach will see that, my area of expertise, using that loosely, are defensive backs. I know some stuff about linemen, but there's certain things, natural movements and things that I wouldn't be able to pick up on. I might see the kid say, hey, he's a big kid, he can do X, Y, Z, but there are going to be some nuts and bolts, some fine-tuned, high-level stuff that a lineman coach by trade would pick up that I wouldn't see. And I might see the kid, he looked okay. And that guy might see, something totally different. Like, hey, this is a kid we have to have. Conversely, if I'm looking at, defensive backs, and I see the guy set the edge and, turn his hips and go and come downhill and, on a pass breakup, it might look like a simple play, but I'm over there like, whoa, wait a minute. So I do prefer that, having guys who are actually know what they're looking for, and they'll know what they see when they see it.
And what if you're like the defensive line coach, and you'd like to go watch one of your defensive linemen in Atlanta, Georgia, but they're like, hey, Flint is your area, and you got to go babysit the kid in Flint, and it's like it might be a wide receiver, and you're going to go watch that because somebody, the coach or somebody's told you that that's who you need to see. Whereas this way, it seems to make more sense. You don't have an area per se, but you're going to fill your room. You're responsible for your room. And like Jerry DiNardo said today, you don't need an assistant coach coming to the head coach and saying, hey man, I don't have enough talent in my room. That's your room that you recruited. So there's more accountability there also. That's how Michigan State's doing it.
It's accountability, the relationships. We talked about certain programs and their approach where the head coach might be the primary recruiter on a bunch of these kids.
Yeah.
And then they get to campus and the head coach doesn't have time. So now the kid feels like, I don't really have a relationship with my position coach because that wasn't the guy that was my primary recruiter. Well, when you are recruiting by position and your position coach, man, if you start reaching out to a kid when he's a junior, by the time he gets on campus, man, that's a long time. You kind of know what you're getting yourself into. I think it should help in terms of transfers and things like that, because you know who you're going to be around every day. And it should also help, man, like identifying. I mean, this is. I don't know if this is a part of the deal or not, but it really will weed out who's strong at recruiting and who isn't.
Absolutely.
Like who can evaluate, players and who can't, because if like you said, if your recruiting room if your position room isn't where you need it to be, well, who's responsible for that?
Yeah, that's a great point, because in recent years in the previous staff there were some assistant coaches that were pulling more weight than others, and before long you start relying on those guys. Hey, that's all interesting stuff. They're doing it differently, and they did it this year without all the wheels on the cart. I mean, now if you can get back out and go through a spring practice where you have recruits coming in to visit, to watch spring practice, coming in for junior days. I don't know if they'll have that for basketball season this year. Probably not. No, they definitely won't. but in the summer official visits, summer camps, and then Mel Tucker, if he can, because he's an impressive guy and he's got a presence to him. And if he's able to work those camps, we don't know what that looks like yet. And the recruits don't either, and neither does the opposition, but it might be strong. It might be strong. I want to ask you about the quarterback transfer, Anthony Russo. Surprise news today out of Temple, graduate transfer, coming to Michigan State. Mel Tucker's always said, when he recruits somebody, expect us to go recruit someone better than you. That's the way it's going to be. Your thoughts on that? I'm not saying he's better than what they've got, but I think I might have lost Ron. Are you still there, Ron? Okay. Darn. We'll have to wait to get it. They say this is like a series. It's like a serial. It's a little bit like a soap opera. So you'll have to tune in next time to find out what Ron Armstrong thinks about Anthony Russo, graduate transfer from Temple, heading to Michigan State. Let's see here.
Call from
Justin Finn.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2. To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Trying. Justin Thin trying again. Sorry about the pause there, but Michigan State with Russo coming in, and they made a quick decision on him also. Now he's going to be enrolling it's my understanding, in January, and as of now with Hampton Fay, that basically 6 quarterbacks on scholarship for the spring. Now, are they all going to be here in the
Call
spring?
From
I'm not sure.
Justin Finn.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Justin, are you there?
Yeah, how you doing, Bill?
All right, let's bring him in. Our SpartanMag.com intern. He's an engineering major. Is it mechanical engineering? What is it, Justin?
Yeah. Yes, that's what it is. Mechanical engineering.
Mechanical engineering, and it's finals week right now. And we are your are we your study break? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, you could put it that way. Basically, I've been studying most of today. Too many exciting things going on here. I blame Mel Tucker if I fail tomorrow.
Yes, don't blame us. You can blame Coach, but we at SpartanMag.com are very happy with everything you're providing for the website and the web community at SpartanMag.com. Great job as an intern. Look forward to having you for years to come in some capacity as you go on off to bigger and better professional things or grad school or whatever. You're always going to have a home here, and we'll get that all straightened out. But you did a great job cluing us in on a lot of scoops throughout this recruiting cycle. And today you had the story as soon as Anthony Russo tweeted out that he'd come to an agreement with Michigan State to be a graduate transfer. Boom, you had the story ready to go. You already had it written. You knew this was happening. Your thoughts on that whole situation? Do you have any other further insight on the Russo transfer to Michigan State?
Yeah, so Corey found out about that like 2-3 hours before it happened, like you said, and then he let me know, and I put that together. And basically, that's kind of something I was looking into for a while. I kind of have been trying to keep track of every single quarterback that anybody on the staff starts to monitor. And he was on the short list of that, so that's something we were looking into closely. And when Blonde Mathis kind of didn't get any sort of real interest from the staff, I kind of knew at that point that they're looking for somebody that's going to be like a 1-year kind of guy, not like a prospect or like a project they're trying to like convert into a real full-time guy. They're looking for a guy that's there, ready right now to take real snaps. So at that point, the focus kind of shifted to Russo, and I guess the Houston Baptist quarterback too a little bit. But Milton had already committed to Florida State by then, so it was a pretty short list. And then Corey messaged me today, and he said that Russo's going green. That was not really that much of a surprise. The only surprise is that it happened today. And I guess I have a few thoughts on that. I know some people were not really excited just because they saw the touchdown to interception ratio over the years. But it's important to note the upward trajectory that he was on this year. He's completing 68% of his passes. I don't know the last time a Michigan State quarterback did that over a course of 3 games. Maybe it's been done recently, and I'm just not remembering, but that's pretty impressive there. Mm-hmm. And then the fact that he had 6 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in that game isn't amazing, but it's something that you can work with. It's a solid base. It's a better ratio than Rocky had here this year. And if you look at some of his throws, I know the 4-minute and 48-second highlight video that's online, that's one of the key ones that everyone's kind of looking at. There's 4 throws in there, one at 40 seconds, one at 1 minute 47 seconds, one at 2:25, and one at 2:33. Those 4 throws really show that he can fit the ball in the window in like real tight spaces. And then outside of those, you see a lot of throws where he's throwing guys open. And you can't really do that unless you're a pretty accurate quarterback, which kind of backs up his completion percentage. And he's not really kind of having guys slow down on some of these deep throws. I know people said he doesn't have a cannon, and that may be true. But at the end of the day, if the DB is like trailing a receiver by 1 step, he's making him pay and putting the ball with a perfect touch over the top. So I think he can make all the throws. The thing I'd be interested to see is kind of like why the interceptions are happening. I know Corey kind of touched on that. So I want to watch some full game film instead of just the highlights. But the highlights did show like what his ceiling is, what like his best moments were, and he definitely can make all the throws. Definitely that I've seen.
And I've not seen any comments from him. He's not speaking right now, which is a good savvy move for an upperclassman, I would imagine. No need to talk any more than unless a coach is asking questions.
I tried to reach out to him. I didn't get anything back. That's kind of a common theme with most transfers anyway, whether or not they've already committed or whether they're still in the search process. They really don't talk to reporters. That's more of like a high school recruit type of thing, it seems like.
This year, a couple of narrow defeats for Temple. Well, they're playing Memphis. Memphis was pretty good. And like I said earlier, 41 out of 63 for 392 yards against Memphis. They lost 41-29. Had 3 interceptions in that game, 4 touchdowns. Against South Florida, 30 out of 42 for 270 with 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And against Navy in a 31-29 loss. So a couple of 2-point losses there. 21 out of 30 for 206 with 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So there's going to need to be a learning curve. You know, he'll be having his 5th offensive coordinator in 5 years when he comes to Michigan State beginning this spring, which is tough.
Yeah.
But like Nils Deco said earlier, Nils is good friends with the former assistant coach that coached there 2 years ago. He thinks he's an NFL draft pick. So that's someone who was an assistant coach on the staff.
Yeah.
In looking ahead to next year, as Peyton Thorne was doing well here at the end of the season, I thought the chances of Michigan State going after a quarterback were decreasing, but that obviously was not the case. So,
I thought the same, but I think that was reflected in the fact that they changed their scope of who they're willing to pursue from basically like most transfer quarterbacks to now just 1-year eligible grad transfer quarterbacks. I think that's where you kind of saw that reflected with how Thorne started to play a little better here at the end.
Sure. All right, Justin, your thoughts about other things in this recruiting cycle and signing day today? What captured your imagination, or what's your takeaway from today? What's on your mind on this signing day night?
Yeah. Well, nothing was really a surprise other than one thing that kind of stood out to me that I was unaware about, that I guess everybody in the industry was unaware about, was the fact that AJ Kirk is early enrolling. And I know everybody already knows how great Brantley and Gravely and how hard they hit and all that is. But Kirk is one of the stronger guys in the same regard. And him being able to early enroll is just giving him an even bigger step up because, as you know, the guys that play early at Michigan State, even under Coach D here at the end, like Josiah Scott playing as a freshman, it's the guys that can hit and they like to hit and they embrace contact. And Kirk, Gravely, and Brantley all possess those skills. And any of those guys that are willing to enroll early just give themselves like a heads up, a step up. But I was saying that he's somebody that hasn't contacted a single recruiting reporter from any site. He kind of makes Jason Bourne look like a public figure with how much of a ghost he is. He just pretty much keeps to himself, doesn't do any sort of communication with anybody. And the only reason we even knew that he was so solid in Michigan State was because of Gravely passing that information along to us. But that's really all we knew. So it was a pleasant surprise that nobody really knew about, that he was early enrolling. Beyond that, everything went pretty much as expected. I've known since October that Michigan State was the likely destination for Notre from USC. And basically, they told Ross Ells and Mel Tucker about 2 weeks ago. I want to say like a day or two before Castile, the Alabama linebacker, committed to Michigan State. That was on the time frame when he gave the silent verbal. My source over at Bishop Gorman confirmed that to me that night. And then I was just wondering about whether he would sign early or not. And like I tweeted out yesterday, like I put it in the bunker, the source texted me 2 days ago saying, you're going to be very happy come Wednesday. So that was squared away there, and everything else went to plan. Now there's still some optimism per Corey that they have a chance to sign Gino here in the next couple of days. We'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I would say it's a very, very successful signing day here today so far.
Wow. So out of all those things you just mentioned to me, which one was your biggest surprise, or which one do you think is the most optimistic for the program?
I think the biggest point of optimism is definitely Ma'a committing. Mm-hmm. Like I said, it wasn't a surprise, but it's so crucial to have a linebacker filling one of the spots in the class, and we really needed that for next year because if and when Antoine leaves, as I know most people are expecting, and Noah Harvey has shown flashes, but I know you have seen how when you've broken down the film that the gap discipline at times is kind of shaky. So it was the linebacker room really needed a boost, and somebody like Ma really helped because, like Corey's kind of hinting at earlier too, him being at Bishop Gorman with the level of weight room they have there, that does wonders for a true freshman that might have to come in and play right away. And I think he's up to 235 now. I saw somewhere, so he can come in and play right away. And one of the things that Mel highlighted in his quotes about Ma was the fact that he has great instincts. And if you combine his instincts with his ready-to-go physicality, I think you can plug and play him right now next to Noah Harvey next year. And if they can land another transfer, I don't know if they're going to land his brother. I know he's being looked at by Ohio State, Miami, Florida State. But Ma is recruiting him hard. We'll see what happens there. But if they can land any other grad transfer, and then it can be, I guess, a 2 deep of Klein, Harvey, Ma, and the fourth transfer, that's looking pretty good then, because linebacker was the shakiest thing for me. Yeah,
and
definitely.
And also this weekend, we've not seen him play much, but I think there's a chance that you might see Jess Lord Boateng play more this weekend out of necessity, possibly, and they'll get a chance to see what he has for next year, because it's good to have some of these prospects with a lot of ability playing early, but if you have too many of them, that can weaken the fence a little bit. As good as Angelo Gross was this year, he had a couple of mistakes that resulted in touchdowns last weekend against Penn State that tilted the game. Now, he's an excellent player. He's got an excellent future, but there's just things that you're confronted with out there that you didn't see on film, that if you don't have that, if it hasn't been done to you before, you can fall prey to some of those things. So, the Nate Aotes, if they're starting at linebacker, that's great. I am impressed that how Mel Tucker said, Ma'a Nate Aote, how cerebral he is. That could help his chances of playing early. In terms of playing early, A.J. Kirk, with his physicality and his frame, I think that's a picture of him right over my shoulder right there, holding the state championship trophy at Akron-Hoban. Physical guy, looks like a college-built guy right now, hits like a college player. Like Ron Armstrong said, might not be able to hit all the time at the college level like that, just to protect yourself. But you saw highlights of him in the state championship game, just in a sinister fashion, blowing people up, can run, hit like crazy. And players that come out of Ohio, especially a state championship program like Hoban that has won like 5 state championships in 7 years, he will have spent his time in the film room. I mean, high school football is important in a lot of places. There's no place that's more important than Ohio, except maybe Texas, but not all of Texas. I mean, it's important in Ohio, and there's great coaching down there. And that's why so often you see Ohio players come to Michigan State, and they are ready to play early, like Angelo Gross. It happens every year. True freshmen from Ohio are the ones most capable of playing early. Michigan State with 2 commitments this year from Ohio, A.J. Kirk and Michael Gravely Jr., who's, in my opinion, his film from his junior year to his senior year, I think improved the most. Watching him hit people. And he played corner this year, and he's 6'1". He's got the size to play safety, but he's out there running around playing corner, back pedal, offhand jam, turning his hips, doing all those things. And then when it comes to time to tackle somebody, he's hitting hard, too, really hard. Physical player. I think Gravely's going to be a guy that can play early. Like I said, you don't want a lot of those, but those are 2 strong candidates to play early, just in terms of their physicality, their ability, and their aptitude, everything. Those 2 Ohio DBs are for real.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point that you bring up, the fact that he played as a corner this year, because that versatility is what's going to give him a leg up in the competition to play that inside sort of DB role that we, going into the season, I, pretty much everybody else assumed that it would be kind of like one of those, like the Swiss Army knife type of Viper kind of linebacker, kind of box guy. But they ended up going with more of a traditional corner. I know Shaq played that role a little bit too. But now if you have a guy that kind of fits both molds of like a physical thumper that can cover, that kind of just gives you the best of both worlds in that role. So I think he has a leg up by playing corner this whole past year while being a safety instinctually. So I think that helps a lot. And like Ron is kind of saying with Brantley, I think Brantley's going to be just a star, and he's probably going to play early. But just along the whole storyline of all the DBs really actually being physical and hitting hard, that was not just some sort of sales pitch that Mel gave when he got hired, saying physicality is what we're looking for. They didn't make any exceptions in that regard whatsoever. Like, sometimes you'll see coaches give that as their brand, and then they'll make an exception for a guy that's a really good cover corner but then doesn't hit. Like, there's no Nnamdi Asomugha, Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie type of guys where they'll run away from contact. I mean, they kind of can cover really well to make up for it. Every single person in this DB class loves to hit. Not just kind of likes to hit. They all love to hit. So I was really impressed that they stuck to that full force there, that being their vision.
They seek physicality, and they got some with these defensive backs. And next year, when you look at the safety situation, Trey Person, he's a senior right now. Will he be coming back? You've got Xavier Henderson. He'll be coming back as a senior next year, most likely. And, behind them, you've got Michael Dowell, who does play both safety and nickel. He has some of that versatility, and I would expect Gravely to have that type of versatility also. And they like to mix and match them a little bit, where someone might be a safety on one down and maybe covering the slot. I think they might morph into that in the future. Like you said, we thought that slot nickel position in a 4-2-5 would be more of maybe your thicker slot hybrid safety linebacker like Antoine Simmons was last year. Michigan State was in a 4-3. He walked out and played the slot most of the time. He was a lighter weight linebacker at about 215 or whatever. They put weight on him, moved him inside. But like you said, Shaq Brown began the season at that nickel position. It's basically a third corner, which is the way Ohio State runs it also. Ohio State runs 3 corners, 1 safety, and they keep a 4-3 on the field. Michigan State will go 3 corners, 2 safeties, but one of the safeties essentially becomes a linebacker a lot of times as a box linebacker, a box safety, a safety playing in the box, as you know. Michael Dowell has got the size to do that. Henderson's got the size to do that. And that's what the difference was this year compared to the old 4-3. It's not the nickel guy. You're taking the third linebacker off the field and replacing him in the box with a safety like Xavier Henderson, who's about 214. A big safety. You don't want that same safety. You don't want that same safety, from what I can tell. You don't want him in the box every single play of every game. So they'll rotate it and trade it back and forth and rock and roll it sometimes. So where Xavier Henderson sometimes will be the deep middle safety and Dowell will come down. So they trade it off so it's not the same 214-pound safety taking on linebacker collisions all year. So it's spread out amongst them. And they're still working on it. I mean, they had some good days this year and some days when they sprung some leaks. But Kirk, the picture of the guy right there, he can get in there and play some box safety. And the guy that they were going after today, Joshua Moore, that they lost to UCLA, he could have done it also. I can see why they liked him. Did not end up getting him, but I can see why they liked him. Now, Audric Estime, that's what on everybody's mind, and you've been close to this all along. Yeah. For people that are just tuning in, Audric Estime, 4-star running back, top 200 in the country, number 7 running back in the country. the best offensive player in New Jersey. Notre Dame's coming after him hard now. Your thoughts? What's the latest on that? Corey was on earlier today, and he thinks that the momentum is heading toward Notre Dame. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that, but I also agree with what Corey said about the fact that the scariest moment was within like 24 hours after Notre Dame offered Audric. I know them having time now, these next 2 months, if he doesn't sign with Notre Dame on Thursday or Friday, that is, they'll be pushing very hard. But kind of the initial fear was the second Audric gets the Notre Dame offer, he's jumping ship. And as you noted, he kind of gave those quotes to Adam Friedman where he was like, all right, hold on. Notre Dame was an offer I really wanted, but I have really strong relationships with Michigan State. And now that was in the midst of him having like that post-offer high of like jubilation of, oh, I just got the offer that I wanted. And if that's his thoughts in that moment, then when cooler heads prevail and he sits back and starts thinking about the relationships and trust even more, that's only going to help Michigan State because Notre Dame made their biggest impact the second they extended him the offer. Now, that doesn't mean he sticks with Michigan State. I just think that I would say that the second he got his offer, it was looking like 80% Notre Dame, 20% MSU. Now it's looking like 65% Notre Dame, 35% MSU as we move past the signing period. So I kind of do agree with the fact that it was the scariest moment was right after he got the offer, and Michigan State's not out of the thick of the woods or anything like that. But it wouldn't hurt necessarily if they held on and they just kept it like this until February.
So the longer it goes, Michigan State will be okay. I mean, the longer it goes, the better it is, possibly.
Yeah, the better. I still think he ends up at Notre Dame if I had to put money on it, but I think it's better if he doesn't jump on this right in the midst of this post-offer high, so to speak.
Any reason to be worried about Rayshawn Benny, the other four-star defensive lineman from Oak Park?
I can't find a reason to be worried about that. I know where the smoke kind of came from, and I guess here's the thing. So right after he committed to Michigan State, of course Michigan wasn't just going to like remove his number from their contact list and all together just pretend like he doesn't exist. They were going to occasionally reach out to him, text him from time to time. He's a respectful dude, so I'm sure he was replying whenever they would text him. He was fully locked into Michigan State and recruiting everybody. He's recruiting Audric really hard. He started hitting up Ma right after he committed to Michigan State. He even had contact with the Georgia linebacker that committed. So he's been recruiting for Michigan State hard. And just because he did not sign, that doesn't mean it's a new development. He'd always said that he was going to sign in the winter. So for somebody to say that, okay, he's not signing in Michigan State in February and Michigan's not dead, okay, factually that's not wrong. That's not something that can be disproven. But it's not a new development that he's not signing in February. And Michigan not being dead is only true if you consider the fact that he's not absolutely ignoring them. But I don't see any reason to believe that he's trending towards Michigan or Michigan's picking up any ground with him. I'm confident enough to say that one is not anything to worry about. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I don't see it happening.
All right. Justin, I really appreciate all your input and everything, and good luck on finals. What do you have final exams in tomorrow? Do you have one tomorrow or two?
Yeah, I've one in heat transfer, two actually. I have one in heat transfer and then one in automotive engine design.
Automotive engine design and heat transfer. Okay, yeah, you call me tonight if you need any help with those things. I can just I can
yeah,
help
definitely. but I don't plan to study either of those things tonight. Today I'll be watching Temple games on YouTube first if Anthony Russo isn't any of them.
Wow, yeah, you've got a sickness, and all of our subscribers do, and we're happy that you do. We're happy that everybody does. Yeah. Now, you told me that it's pass-fail at Michigan State right now, right? There's no grades?
It is, yeah. Yeah, so my logic is anything that's below my average GPA, I'm going to just go ahead and take the pass, like hide the grade. And anything that's above, so like a 4.0 is what I'll take the grade on. So basically it's like I either kill it on the exams or I'm just going to pretend like they don't matter. So that's the philosophy there.
Well, you're just naturally smart, so you can do things like that.
Yeah,
Hey,
we'll see. I'll let you know tomorrow if the assessment's right.
You'll do well. You'll do really well. We're proud of you. And you have a great holiday season. And is there anything else from signing day that caught your eye that you want to mention that we've not talked about?
I guess there's one thing I was thinking about this while Ron was talking about it. I think Ethan Boyd, this might be kind of a hot take. I think he might be a second-round draft pick. I think he's the guy that I'm the absolute highest on that won't play as a freshman. Me and Corey spent 2 hours a couple weeks ago at his last home game watching him, and 2 hours the time before that. And I don't think I've ever seen somebody get any sort of edge on him. Like, he absolutely does not let anybody get past him. I understand it's easy competition in the middle of Michigan there, but I've never seen somebody that dominant on the island by themselves. And he's so dominant that they don't pass because they know they can just run towards his high side and basically pick up a first down on most of the plays. Maybe that's kind of just me being fooled by how dominant he looked the 2 times I saw him in the film. But there's nobody I'm more sold on for their pro potential, other than obviously Brantley and some of these guys might play right away, than Boyd. I think he's like the most surefire, highest floor guy in this whole class, I would say.
Interesting. What did you think of Andrell Anthony when you were at those East Lansing games? For those that might not be aware, Andrell Anthony, wide receiver at East Lansing High School, was down to Michigan State and Michigan. Yeah. So, committed to Michigan, I think, in October.
Yeah.
Or July. It was in the summer.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's the offensive coordinator's blame or what, but I never really saw them get out in the open. If you have like a Russo playmaker, like a KJ Hamler at Penn State or something like that, you would try to get them the ball in space and try to just have them weave through the opposition, or maybe a jet sweep or something like that. I really never saw him blow by anybody or really do anything dangerous in space. He actually was really impressive to me as a possession receiver. Maybe that's just because they knew they could get away with it because the guys that were covering him were kind of shorter and not as physical. So they would kind of just use him as like a Calvin Johnson type. And you wouldn't expect that to be the way he carves out a spot for himself in the next level. So I never really saw him put on the burners or kind of make anybody look silly in open space or kind of do anything highlight reel worthy, which is what I went into all those games thinking. They were kind of using him as a possession receiver. I don't know if that's to mask the fact that he isn't that explosive or if that's just how they felt was just the most surefire way since they couldn't cover him up top. But that was not exactly what I was expecting to see from Andrell, either of the 2 times I saw him in person.
All right. I appreciate all your input, and we look forward to hearing from you again soon and keeping us abreast with your ear to the ground on all things happening with Audric Estime as we chart that situation at the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com. Justin, appreciate it, and you have a great holiday season, all right? Talk to you soon, all right?
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. You take care.
Yep. You too. Happy holidays.
All right. I just texted Ron back. I want to get him back on the show. We don't want to wait till next week to ask him about Russo and some of these other things. But I'm going to go over some of the items here over in the chat area. I know some of you asked questions going back. We've been on the air for a good, hour and 40 minutes. So I want to check in and see if you guys had some questions or some other comments or wisecracks or criticisms or jokes or anything that you're poking fun at the host. That's always okay. Starting 5 got Detroit Spartan, Rob South, got Fashenko in the middle, and Doors fan bringing it up, and Hayden Vischer running the point. So the starting 5, Detroit Spartan, Rob South, Brad Fashenko, Doors fan, 91, and Vischer. It's a good group. You guys got to work on your speed a little bit, though, but I like that group. All right, let's see. I think we got Moby chiming in.
Call from
Ron Armstrong.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2. To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Let's bring him back. Ron Armstrong. Hey, we lost you earlier, so I wanted to bring you back because it was a little bit of a cliffhanger. Was there something that you were talking about at that time when we lost your call? I can't remember. Are you there, Ron?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't remember, but just we were just kind of touching base with the recruiting class and liking that DB group and some big kids coming in. we were briefly going to talk about Hampton Fay.
Okay.
The quarterback coming in. No, you know what? We're going to talk about the transfer from Temple.
Yeah. Anthony Russo, senior out of Pennsylvania. When he was a recruit, he was ranked the number 18 player in Pennsylvania. Went to Temple, put up some numbers, threw some interceptions. What were your thoughts when you heard that news that he was grad transferring to Michigan State, starting effective immediately?
You know, it's good news. It's good news from the standpoint of you want to have some competition in the QB room, and you want to have some veteran competition. So if you look at the numbers, like I said, the touchdown interception ratio is not where you exactly wanted to be, but the guy's played a lot of football. He's taken a lot of game snaps, and that's just something we don't have right now in that QB room. And 68% of his passes, I haven't watched enough film to know if they're, if that's a Big 12, 68% where they're running bubble screens and the little flip passes that get counted in that completion percentage, or if they're throwing the ball down the field. Mm-hmm. So that needs to be, looked into a little bit more. But anytime you can add a guy to your QB room that's played that much football, it can't, especially when that position is, still up in the air for us. It can't do anything but help. And the fact that he's a one-year guy, I don't think that should be a negative with any other guys that are in that room. Okay. So it really just gives them, listen, that job's still available. Now, granted, with him being a one-year guy, you got to feel like he wouldn't have pulled the trigger so quickly if he didn't feel like it was his job to lose. But be that as it may, you still got to go out there and play, and those other guys still have a chance to make plays and earn their shot. But all in all, I like it. I like bringing in a veteran because if you can come out of spring ball and knowing who your quarterback is, that puts us so much further ahead in our development in the off season with summer workouts and these guys getting out throwing the ball and receiver QB relationships. So I like it. Hopefully that it goes well and he pans out for us. But on the surface, that's a good move.
If you are Peyton Thorne, how do you think you take that news?
If you're Peyton Thorne, I think you take it as you got some work to do. You're a young guy, and they feel like they still need to get better at that position. It doesn't mean that you can't be the guy. I think you take it the same way you would take any other quarterback coming in, or any other player in your position coming in. That you got work to do, and if you're listening to Coach Tucker, and you're process driven, you go out there and you work your process. You get in there, you watch film, you make throws, you get better, and you beat the guy out. That's how you approach that. Because with football, and I know it's a cliche, but especially at the quarterback position, you really are one play away from being a starter. So I think you go into the spring, and he probably wouldn't admit this, but also gives you a chance to get better. It gives you a chance to, if you're Peyton Thorne, you could take this opportunity to work on your craft without the pressure of carrying the team right now. I know that's not a popular thought, but you get a chance to take some pressure off you, exhale a little bit, and still get better and have a chance to win that starting job, but not everybody expecting you to be the guy that's carrying the program right now, when you may not necessarily be ready for that amount of pressure.
If you're Rocky Lombardi, how do you take that news?
If you're Rocky Lombardi, I think you got to have a long conversation with yourself and say, hey, am I a quarterback here? That's not, or am I a quarterback, period? If you feel like you're a quarterback, you want to play quarterback, chances are the opportunity to play quarterback at Michigan State is not going to be there. That's that's the reality of it. Yeah, you can go out and you can try to win the job, but I think if he's a starter day one, the fall, a lot of things have gone wrong. That's what I believe. So if you're Rocky Lombardi, you got to evaluate, do you want to play quarterback or do you want to play at Michigan State? Because if you want to play at Michigan State, you might be, open to a position change or, some sort of Taysom Hill type thing where you're coming in, you're running short yardage, QB runs, stuff like that. That may be there for you. But I think at this point, we've probably seen enough of him to know that there's limitations with our program and our team with him as a starter.
Sure. Same thing with Theo Day, I would imagine then, right?
I think out of all the guys in the QB room, he would probably be the one that is going to have a long conversation with how much he enjoys being on the team versus how much he wants to actually play. Mm-hmm. Because you got to look at the depth chart and you got to figure, you're for a ways down, from getting on the field. If you're Theo Day, look, Kirk Cousins was a no-name guy coming in the spring and surprised everybody, but Theo Day was just going to be, his third spring.
Right.
And you haven't seen any meaningful snaps.
Absolutely.
You got a year and a half of big-time D1 football, and they're recruiting over you. Mm-hmm. And at bigger programs, you probably have a year where, they make up their mind and this guy's probably not going to play for us.
Now, Theo Day, you and I were there at East Lansing High School, and he was playing there for Dearborn Divine Child against East Lansing, and we saw him play some safety that day. I'm not saying he's a safety, but he's 6'5", 225. What if he says, Coach, this spring I want to get tight end a shot?
Listen, go over there and, go to the tight end QB, go to the tight end meeting room. If you got guys that are willing to, if obviously said he wanted to play left tackle, obviously that's just not going to work out, but he has the body type. You think he has the wherewithal and the athletic ability that he can help you out at that position. You take a look.
Tyler Hunt figured it. Tyler Hunt figured it out.
Right, and which is interesting because by the end of the year, that kid ended up being pretty reliable.
Man, that's a crazy. That's a crazy athlete. Did you hear that stuff about he can throw a ball 70 yards? With his right hand, and, and 50 yards.
Wouldn't surprise me one bit. Wouldn't surprise me one bit. When I was on the team, Josh Butland had the best arm on the team.
Yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me one bit.
Butland could bench 400 also, couldn't he?
Oh yeah, it's a 400-pound bench press, easy. I think he did 225 32 times or something like that.
The old just sitting around, at Crunchies with a bucket talking football and fantasy stuff about what if this, what if that. One of the ones we used to talk about is like, okay, if you had 11 versions of one guy, let's see, what guy would you want? Like you could have 11 Marvin Wrights out there. Or you could have 11 Matt Trandons. Who's winning that football game? And Marvin Wright was a popular one because he was a state championship quarterback, right? But Josh Butland,
right,
he can punt for you. 5 Josh Butlands can play offensive line for you. He can throw.
And he was tough as nails.
Would he have won the 11 Josh Butlands? Would 11 Josh Butlands beat 11 Lorenzo Whites? Probably not.
Geez, no, because Low White was so talented. No.
Low would just figure out. He'd just run wishbone, right? He'd just.
Low they would have. The only issue you'd run into is Lorenzo 1 upsetting the other 10 Lorenzos because they wouldn't get carries.
Yeah. I heard that.
But no, look, I think there's going to be some guys that are just going to have some, big boy conversations. Now, those conversations have gotten a bit easier with this transfer, opening up. And I talked about that earlier in the year. I'm like, they're going to get rid of that sitting out. You just can't you can't have football available during the pandemic. Then when guys want to transfer the year after, they're like, well, wait a minute, you got to sit now. We can't do that. I think this was, truthfully, more of a favor to the coaches than it was to the kids.
And you mean
roster management gets a lot easier when guys are transferring and they don't have to sit. You can coax guys out of your program a little bit easier when there's an opportunity for them to go play right away, and it's not going to D2 and being eligible.
All right, let me ask you about the camaraderie intangibles of bringing in a transfer. Harbaugh brought in transfers every year. They're at quarterback for 2 or 3 or 4 years, and now he's got a mess in his locker room. I'm not saying that caused it, but you have to make sure you don't have too much salt in the stew. You know what I'm saying? You got to be careful with your ingredients on that. Coaches always say players don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And Tucker's the guy that wants you to know that he cares, but it's all business too. It's both. How difficult is it to balance both of those?
I can tell you this. And this is just simple, the short of it. Can you play? That's question number one. Can you help us win games? You know, everybody wants to start. Everybody wants to play. Everybody wants minutes. Everybody wants that. But everybody understands that the best guys the guys that are give us the best chance to win on Saturday are going to be the guys that are playing. And if you transfer in and you can help us win, you're going to find that it might be a few, you know, guys with wrinkled faces and angry a little bit, but at the end of the day, when the whistle blows on Saturday afternoon in Spartan Stadium, if you're lighting up the scoreboard or you're getting interceptions or you're whatever the case may be, you're helping us win, that doesn't matter. But before all that happens is what kind of guy are you? Are you bringing in a guy that fits with what we are right now? And I don't know, much about other programs, but I will tell you this about Michigan State football. It's something to be said about being a Spartan dog and the kind of guy you want in the locker room. And that's going to be the number one. Is that guy a fit for the kind of people we have in here in our building already? And if the answer is yes to that.
But what if he is the best player?
The answer is yes to that. Okay, go ahead.
What if he is the best quarterback, but he's not the personality?
Okay. Now, is he a detriment? Like, is he one of those kind? Because you have some guys with just space cadets. Like, they're just different dudes, and that's okay. Different dudes can play for you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, some guys just, they walk between the raindrops. They're just different guys. That's okay. But you can't be a jerk.
Yeah. And and you can't. You've been on teams at that level, of course, and I have not. But if you are a jerk, but you've been there since you were 18, like Kirk Gibson or Connor Cook, but you can play, you can win with that too.
Yeah, because you're our jerk. You're our jerk. We know you're a jerk.
Yeah.
You're not somebody else's jerk that we inherited.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I played with some guys that were jerks, but heck, I came in with them and I knew they were jerks when we got there, and they're probably jerks now. But they're one of us. And they ran, they did the sprint test, and they got yelled at by GP, and they didn't know where the heck we were supposed to be when we were freshmen. And I mean, all those things along the way, you build equity in those things. So yeah, the guy's a jerk, but you know what? When GP was going to rip my head off for being late to a meeting, that dude covered for me.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Or maybe he's just a jerk, but you know what? He's our jerk. He's one of our guys.
But he's consistent.
And he's consistent. He's a jerk. Hey, you know what? He's still one of our guys. So really, man, listen, you got to win the locker room over first. And it's just coming in, and how you do that is you come in, you keep your mouth shut, you work hard, and good things will happen.
All right. Now, Rocky,
I'm sure you heard that before.
Sure. Now, Rocky Lombardi at 6'4", 225. One of Mel Tucker's favorite quotes right now is, "I've never gone wrong with a wrestler." And that includes the linebacker from Florence, Alabama, Castile. Rocky Lombardi was a wrestler. What if Rocky Lombardi wants to play tight end? Same thing, right?
Listen. At this point, it's all hands on deck.
And Rocky's a team guy, and he's a leader, and that's one of the things Tucker liked about him, and that's why Tucker kept giving him a chance, because Tucker also says...
And I think he would be a plus player at tight end. I think he would be a plus player. He's a tough guy. Only thing I worry about is he might put the ball on the ground every now and then. But I think he'd be a plus player at tight end. If I'm gonna name drop somebody, and it probably shouldn't be just because it's old.
You're not gonna say Luke Bency, are you?
Nope.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going a different direction because I played in the All-Star game when we were in high school. A dude named Jay Remersma.
Yeah. Okay.
He was a quarterback.
Yeah.
From Zeeland.
Uh-huh.
Ended up going to Michigan and becoming a pretty decent tight end.
Oh yeah, really good tight end. Sure. Yeah.
But he was a quarterback by trade. I mean, he was recruited. He was a big-time quarterback. He started for the West
State
Michigan
champion.
the All-Star game at Spartan Stadium?
Yes, Reamersma, sure.
He was actually the starting quarterback on the West team that I was on. He was a starting quarterback. It was a big-time quarterback recruit, and got down the road, and they moved him to tight end. He had a pretty good career. I think he played on Sundays for the Bills a little bit, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right. And Matt Sokol was a high school tight end also. He was an athletic guy. He never quite came around with the hands and the blocking. He was a project, but he was a high school quarterback.
Yep.
And the reason I mentioned that,
I think Rocky could do it.
Yeah, I think he could too. And the reason I mention it is because, first of all, they've got the frames to do it. Rocky's got the mindset to do it, that wrestling background. Theo, I don't know him well enough. Maybe could, maybe wouldn't. I don't know. But also, they just happen to play on a team that needs tight ends. And Michigan State only signed one tight end today,
right.
Cameron Allen, the kid out of Texas, who looks pretty good. You know, they signed one tight end last year, Guajardo, and he's never gotten on the field, never dressed. And tight ends coach Gilmore said when we had a chance to interview him back, at the beginning of camp in September or whenever it was, I asked him about Guajardo and some of these guys. And he said, well, we're hoping we don't have to use Guajardo this year. And I was like, I didn't have a follow-up question, but I'm thinking to myself, this is a year when you don't have to worry about protecting somebody's eligibility. Guajardo, I liked his film athletically. He's only like 6'3", but he's got some quickness, some slipperiness. I thought that with Michigan State, with the tight end situation, he might be able to help, but he's never dressed. So, and they've had a shortage of tight ends in recent years. That's why they've got a former walk-on punter as the starting tight end right now. And Evan Morris, the kickoff specialist from Ovid Elsie, is the number 4 tight end right now. Walk-on punter and you got a walk-on punter and a walk-on kicker in your top 4 at tight end. Trenton Gillison banged up.
Right.
Will he be available this weekend? We don't know. And then Matt Dotson's back and doing some decent things, although he still misses blocks. I mean, if he gets his hands on you, he's blocking okay. But there was a key play when Michigan State was losing momentum against Penn State. Oh, Michigan State was running the...
Gave up that inside rip.
Yeah,
Michigan State gave up the inside rip, didn't cross his face. Yep.
On the counter boot, it was... the waggle, and it was like the reciprocal of the play they ran so well in the first half. In the first half, they had the tight bunch. I don't know if probably to the boundary, and they ran. They faked outside zone to the boundary, and they dragged Dotson across the field through counter boot to him. Right, did that twice. So at halftime they're going to adjust to that. Right, so come out in the second half, you're going to change it up. You're going to have the tight bunch to the field and run the fake outside zone to the boundary also, but you're gonna counter boot back to the bunch side. And you saw the play. Matt Dotson is protecting on that and takes a false step, and the guy gets a little bit of a lead on him, and that guy pressures the quarterback. Quarterback has to ground it. And that was I think that was 2nd down and 10 and that was one of the 3 and outs. Michigan State had 3 straight 3 and outs while that lead went from 8 to 1 to down 7 to down 15, in 3 straight possessions. And Michigan State couldn't get a first down. They missed a block right there. And Dotson did some good things catching the ball. But he did that against Rutgers. He did that against Rutgers. He's done it a couple times. I mean, he's a willing guy. He's putting out some effort. When they were down by 3 or 4 touchdowns against Ohio State, he caught a ball and lowered his shoulder and broke 2 tackles, playing hard for 9 yards down by 30. I respect that. He's got ability, but the little nuances of accountability and blocking still evades him now and again. And all saying that, I think the program... I don't know on the inside what it's like, but I would think they would love to have Dotson back next year. If they can get a 5th year out of him, a healthy year, he can help, and they need tight ends.
For sure.
And he's doing his best.
He's a big body kid. He's a big body kid. He's a big body kid for sure.
And it was a small thing. It was a small thing, but if he just executes that block, and it was not a difficult block, it was just an area block. If he executes that block and they complete a pass and get a first down, I think they might have been down 1 or 8 or that time. The game can change on 1 first down, on 1 block.
Something just popped in my head, and I don't think I ever noticed it until just we're having this conversation. But I wonder if it's something in our alignment or our stance is tipping the play a little bit. Because now that I think about it, our tight ends guys spike charge against our tight ends more than any team I see. And maybe it's just because I watch us, I notice it, but I wonder if it's just something in our tight end, the way they release or something in their technique. Well, because most DNs, they're not jumping inside unless they know they can make that play.
maybe on that one, but I would submit that Dotson was getting beat last year too.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I wonder if it's something.
But it's a different. It's a different.
These kids are tipping. If they're leaning?
The kids are.
Is it something because if you're a DN, it's like a defensive back going for a pick. Hey man, if you make a play on the ball, you better get it. So if you're a defensive end, unless these defensive coordinators are that good and they're calling spike charges against us that often. But if you're going to spike against, and for those who are listening, a spike is just taking a hard inside. If a DN just takes a hard inside. And if you're going to do that, you have to make the play because if nobody else is out there. And I've noticed now that I think about it, that's whenever we're running up, it's a common thread that our tight ends get beat across the face.
All right, so this weekend against Maryland, you're probably getting a little bit of this vibe also, and I'm hearing it. These players are worn out psychologically, emotionally, mentally. They've been at it since July because they tried to, sprint through summer workouts, which is part of it. But during summer workouts in camp, an important part of camp, as you know, is when it's over and you get to go home for a day and a half. These guys have not had that day and a half of home cooking and just hitting your own pillow and, seeing mom and all that stuff. They've not seen anybody. And Corey and I think Justin and I were talking about it earlier, that about the pressures of trying to win football games and all those pressures. You beat Michigan and then you lose these other games. And also the pressures of accountability, of doing your job well and competing against, your teammates. That's part of it also. And then you're being asked to not go and mix with anyone else except your roommates ever. No girlfriends, no nothing. You can't see, even other players on the team, they wanted to limit that. And then school, and it's finals week this week. And they're asking them to play another game. Tucker wants to play because he wants to get out there and get some more work, take some more inventory. Tucker said if there's a bowl game, they would like to take it. And if they beat Maryland, there might be a bowl game. But you've seen Georgia Tech, not Georgia Tech, but Virginia, Boston College, Pittsburgh have all said we're not interested in a bowl game. As a selfish journalist wanting to observe, and I want to see Peyton Thorne again and have more inventory to take as an observer, I would like to see a bowl game. But really, I wouldn't. I mean, as a human being, I think these guys need to go home and wrap up some, holiday gifts and some presents and have some meatloaf and just chill and take a COVID test before they go home and just decompress because they've more than earned it. I don't want to patronize them by saying they've earned it or anything, but these young men have been away from their homes for 6 months and they've been put through a ringer, and I don't know how tough that is. But I know there's also more difficult ways of life that are out there. But these guys, between a choice of playing another bowl game, and especially in a bowl game this year, it's not like you're going to go down to Tampa and hit the beach all the time and go to the restaurants and stuff. That's going to be closed down as well. So if you've got a choice between 3 more weeks of practice for one, or 2 more weeks of practice for a bowl game, or 2 weeks at home with no school and nothing, And when you're looking ahead to winter conditioning beginning, January 15th or whatever, you might have a better team for winter conditioning if you just take those 2 weeks off rather than playing a bowl game. Your thoughts on that?
I think, I go back and forth on that.
Yeah.
I think some of your younger guys, you might have, with this being such a young team, I mean, I think they may have a different approach where they just, especially if there's guys who haven't played much all year, where this game and possibly a bowl game, they'll get an opportunity to get some snaps. They may be a little bit more excited to play, but some of these older guys that are juniors and they're a little banged up because we didn't have a ton of depth. They got to be running on fumes, and not so much physically, but just you're not used to playing football and still being at it this late with that daily grind of practice and class, but like you said, not having those times to just be kids and have fun with your buddies and your girl and go home and hang out. All those things count and when you're playing ball and you have to be locked in, man, you need to have that downtime to just be a kid and laugh and be silly.
Yeah.
So I do think it is wearing on them and it wouldn't surprise me if you see sort of that Jekyll and Hyde performance this weekend where we may be up early and just run out of gas.
Yeah.
Just, mentally just tired,
And if the game is played Saturday, if one team is still into it and the other one is not, then you're going to see, like Iowa has been beating teams lately. Or I think it was Bobby Williams' last game when they lost to Penn State 61-7. Now that was a great Penn State team, but you had a team on the field that just, game 12, the price of winning collisions at that point, that can get difficult. Now this team, they had that great win against Northwestern, spruced them up, and then they're playing Ohio State, and that one got away from them early, rallied a little bit and did some decent things, but they wanted to, represent themselves better against Penn State. Trophy game, name opponent. We just got beat by Ohio State. We're better than that. Let's go out. And they put together their best quarter of the year in the second quarter. Then, of course, it fell apart and they lost the game. But they were able to get up for the game. Now you're not playing Penn State. Now you're 3-5. Are you playing for a trophy? Are you really playing for a bowl game? I think Detroit Spartan just posted a moment ago, he's hearing that they're kind of worn down. I wonder if Mel Tucker's seeing that. Is he, I wonder what response he would have to that. Mel Tucker's big on how much do you love football. And right now there's a lot of people that might be borderline as to whether they're going to be invited back to the team. So they want to prove that they do love football. It's a tough call right now. And we don't know where Maryland is in that whole thing. But it's been a tough season for all those guys. And I just hope, I wish them the best this year. That's this weekend. That's for sure. Anything else, Ron? You still there? I think we lost Ron. I have that situation with Ron a lot of times when I talk to him on the phone. I'll start talking and thinking I'm making like a great point, and he's like just listening, and I'm just like really being profound about something. But in actuality, I just lost the call. Anyway, give us some thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you've never done it before. If you're not a SpartanMag.com subscriber, get over there. Give us a 30-day free trial, and we will make you an addict, and you'll like it. And Corey Robinson and Justin Thinn, they'll be your suppliers. They're good suppliers. They got a good supply, and they don't get high on their own supply, which is key. Let's go back over these questions real quick, then we'll wrap it up. Doors Fan 91 says, do you think signing day has lost a lot of significance with the ease of the transfer portal now? Good point. That letter of intent is not as binding as it used to be. You're right. Good point. I've not thought about it that way. Gordon Tonona's here. Mike Stroker's here. That was from a couple hours ago. It's good to see him. He's an old friend of mine. Very dear friend. Good guy. Hayden Vischer says, can you say ma, not teote 5 times fast? No, I can't say it once. Detroit Spartan says, during the building years of the Coach D era, we had some interesting signing days to the point that he changed his philosophy in order to eliminate the drama. Good history right there. Tom Kelly says, I feel like we don't have many reaches in this class. I would agree with that. In terms of reaches, reaches, are guys that have, like defects here and there that were 11th hour additions. Like Larice Nelson was kind of in that category. Turned out to be pretty good for a year or two. Haven't seen him this year, but he's a little guy. Maybe didn't have the greatest speed, but he ended up being pretty good right away. I would say in terms of the guys with, I'm not saying anything disparaging about anybody, but like, Davion Prim, the running back, Davion Prim, he's got some work to do. Could be competitive in that running back room, especially if Audric Estime shows up. But, Prim, he's okay. Angelo Gross Enthusiast says, checking in. Detroit Spartan. Angelo, you had a couple of coverage busts last Saturday. Penn State's turf is atrocious. That's what Angelo Gross says. So these guys are kind of have little wisecracks among themselves. I like it. I can appreciate that. Some creativity involved. Gordon Tadona says, you're great with the Samoan names. Can you pronounce the last name of the Navy coach? No. Kenyam Tanmakal Navratilova. Detroit Spartan says, Angelo Gross, Comp, what is your take on Anthony Russo? We've been through that a little bit. Well, we heard from some other people. Like Ron, I want to watch some full games and see what happened with those interceptions. And I also want to see some of these completions to see how often he's checking to a second and third receiver, just out of curiosity. Tom Kelly says, make sure everybody to hit the thumbs up button. I agree with that. Appreciate that. Greg Hughes says, what's up, Tom Kelly? Nehemiah Wade says, Coach Mel Tucker is on a mission. Cannot disagree with that. Can't disagree with that. Hayden Fisher says, Chuck Brantley, bright future. I agree with that also. 4-star corner out of Florida, Venice, Florida. Hard hitter, good feet. Football player. Commits to Michigan State in April. Never wavered. I mean, that's almost too good to be true. Big part of this recruiting class. 313 Hitman says, I like Mel's approach. I like our chances to compete with Go Blue far as Detroit goes too. They're talking about Detroit recruiting, you mean? I would agree. And now that Mel Tucker is going to be, all hands on deck, or his boots on the ground is what I was looking for in terms of recruiting. Out there in the schools this spring, perhaps, having recruits visit here can take his recruiting to a different level. Instead of getting started in March, he'll get started earlier, and I think he'll have an impact in Detroit. Penn State's been recruiting well in Detroit in recent years. Mel Tucker can run some resistance against that. In the meantime, we all know that Michigan's program is got a flat tire right now, if not a couple of flat tires. So having beaten Michigan this fall, Mel Tucker can go into Detroit and I would think do as well as they've done in Detroit in a while. And, hey, no secrets about it. For the last few years previously, the Curtis Blackwell situation hurt Michigan State in Detroit. It's my understanding that's not as much as not a hindrance anymore, maybe a little bit in some circles, but I think that's not going to be a hindrance. We're going to see what Tucker and his people can do in Detroit. It's going to be interesting. Douglas Vanger says, wasn't Gabe Neely supposed to be a great recruiter? Yes, he was, for about 3.5 weeks. He ended up signing with South Florida? And he's a big 6'4" defensive back. A good hitter also. If he would have been part of this class, that's another good hitter. All right. Talking about the slideshow in the background. Detroit Spartan says, I don't think physicality is going to be an issue with Budden. I would agree with that. He's a big tank of a linebacker. You guys want to switch over here to the Beaumont background? And it is snowing right now in East Lansing, Michigan. At least it was when I began. Beautiful. Big Will says, I really like how Tucker's recruiting nationally. He has gone national. He said he would, and he has, for different types of recruits. Got a linebacker from Nevada/California. Got a linebacker from Alabama, which was an interesting poaching of Troy University in the Sun Belt. Going down there, get a 6'2.5", 6'3" linebacker. Castile, who's got good, sneaky good closing speed. Some physicality on the tackle. Interesting one. So you got one from Alabama, one from Nevada, one from Tennessee. That's a defensive end from Tennessee. And the defensive end from Tennessee, Alex Okello, that's a guy that I've not seen any senior film on him. His junior film was interesting. Lean at 6'5", probably about 218, 219. Quick takeoff, quick closing speed, long arms for days. Athlete. What I didn't see, I'd have to look at more film. I looked at it once and I looked at it again last night, but his junior film is whether he has that ability to turn the corner with the hip flexibility, ankle flexibility to really run the hoop and, do those things at the end of a pass rush or the top of a pass rush that really gives offensive linemen trouble. Does he have that hip flexibility? And I didn't see that from him as a junior, and he's still, he's still a late bloomer. I don't know if he's still new to football or not, but he's a late bloomer. And I was curious to see what he looked like as a senior. Has he added that component? Has he gotten better as a pass rusher? And his senior film was nowhere to be found. He didn't put anything up on Huddle. He's been difficult to get a hold of. And then today for signing day, they didn't run any video. Maybe there's some video over at the official site. I'm not sure. But usually for signing day, they run 2 or 3 video highlights of players. And they didn't have any video of him. Maybe they've got it over at the official site. I'll check that out. But Okello was a guy I was really looking at because the team is low on those natural pass rusher type of guys. Drew Beasley, a former walk-on, for a walk-on, he's got some of that natural bend to him. That's why he is the all-time leader in tackles for loss at Warren D. LaSalle, and he's been okay as a pass rusher this year. okay to the point that he was honorable mention All Big Ten as voted by the coaches. So Drew Breesley, congratulations to him, announced today, honorable mention All Big Ten. Let's see, third, Shaq Brown was first team All Big Ten by the coaches. Antoine Simmons, I think, was third team All Big Ten by the coaches. Congratulations to those guys. Beasley, natural pass rushing bend to him. Will Golston, NFL player, but I said when he was here, I thought he was a 5-technique defensive end. Play a defensive end in a 3-4 so that an outside linebacker could be the edge rusher. Because Golston, as good as he was as an NFL player, did not have that natural run-the-hoop ability. Good enough to be an All-Big Ten, excellent impact college player, but didn't really check all the boxes. But as good as he was, he can certainly play in the NFL with that. I'm not saying it's a bad thing that some guys don't have that. Fletcher, I'm still looking for Fletcher. I saw him in the T-shirt camps, and as a good defensive end, I didn't think he had that ability to run the hoop. He's got good straight line speed to converge, closing speed, but running the hoop is a different thing. So I wanted to see if this Okello guy had it, and no senior film. But Mel Tucker's quote on him today, he thinks he has it. Mel Tucker on Alex Okello, the defensive end from Nashville, Tennessee. He said Alex is a very long and lean and has tremendous initial quickness and burst. I would agree with that. He said he's got big-time upside, especially as a pass rusher. He can bend and run and shows great natural ability to get to the quarterback, and he has good speed to chase down ball carriers from the backside, while his length allows him to recover quickly and get ball carriers down. So that's what Tucker said about Okello. Good quotes there. Also in the program, Avery Dunn was a linebacker. Michigan State recruits him as a defensive end. Last year's class, he's a freshman right now. He's been on the dress list and has been on the field, the warm-up field for every game. I don't think he's gotten into a game, but he's along the same lines. Lean athlete that needs to fill out, about 6'5". He can turn the corner and bend. Got him out of Ohio. And something I wrote, SpartanMag.com earlier today, someone like Okello, 6'6", 217, tall, thin. When you look at defensive ends, pass rushers in the NFL, when they're 27 years old and great pass rushers, you go back and look at their recruiting profile when they were 17, they weren't NFL heft at that time. They were tall and skinny and like 205 pounds and 6'5", and they grew, and they've got all that speed, and they gradually fill that frame out without losing a lot of speed. The guys that are real good defensive ends, that look like defensive ends in high school right now, that are thick, those guys turn out to be Lawrence Thomas. They just keep growing. You move them inside. So finding those pass rushing defensive ends is tricky because they don't look like finished products when they're 17. They look like this Okello kid from Nashville. That's a big question I have for this class. Not a question mark in terms of a negative, but I'm intrigued about his development in the last 12 months, but there's no film on him. So this year, he's the Sasquatch of the recruiting class. Darquez Denard was the Sasquatch of his recruiting class. There was no film on that guy. None. For media. There was film for coaches. Not all coaches. I mean, Michigan State recruited and requested it. You know the story on Darquez Denard. Montez Sweat was a Sasquatch. There was no film on him.
Call from
George.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Yeah, I don't know, George.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
George sounded a little...
Okay. I sent the caller to voicemail. At any time, you may press star to join the call. Your caller just hung up. Goodbye.
Yeah, George sounded like he had a little smirk to his voice. I have a feeling George was going to get on here and try to podcast bomb us. So, didn't recognize the name. And, George, I apologize. If you want to call me after the show, we can talk about it. Maybe we can get you on next time. Man, there was one dude that called in that I didn't let on the air like about a month ago. Dude was from New York City. And he was like, "My name is Brutus." And it was... Actually, you know what? He called he called after the show was over. He thought the show was still going on, and I answered the phone at like midnight. I was working on stuff, and I just humored him because he thought he was on the air, and you guys would have thought it was hilarious. It was lewd and off color, and he Brutus he was looking for a friend. It was interesting. It was like National Geographic. But George from Smithfield, Virginia, area code 757-371. I won't give the rest of the numbers, but call me when the show's over, and George, we can talk about it. But anyway, all right. So you got a kid from Nevada, you got a linebacker from Alabama. So a linebacker from Alabama, linebacker from Nevada. They recruited Nateote hard for obvious reasons. 4-star, go to Alabama to get one. But that's also a reflection of not getting guys closer to home. They liked the butt-in kid at linebacker from Belleville, and there was a linebacker from Detroit, King or Cass Tech, that went to Penn State also. Not a ton of linebackers in state. As far as Ohio goes, I know Reed Carrico was a big timer, and Ohio State got him, and he was at Michigan State's camp the summer before D'Antonio's last summer camp. He came up, took a look at it. He's coached by Trevon Pendleton, the former fullback, the Rose Bowl hero, walk-on from Michigan State. He's head coach down there, southeastern Ohio, down on the West Virginia border. And Reed Carrico, I was watching his senior film today. I hadn't seen him in a while. Oh, he's going to fit right in. He's an Ohio State linebacker. He's going to be good. He's a hammer. And the running back for Ohio State, Pryor, when you start looking at Ohio State's film, you're like, okay, it's different. That running back, Pryor, I think he's got that J.K. Dobbins acceleration and like change direction while accelerating. Or I don't know if that's physically possible, but it looks like he accelerates when he changes direction. And there's one play by the goal line. It's one thing when a guy makes a cut at a 90-degree angle or runs the hoop as a pass rusher. This guy, it wasn't a 90-degree angle. It wasn't 45. That'd probably be impossible to high rate of speed. But I don't know when I've seen a running back turn on a dime like a sports car like that Pryor kid, the running back for Ohio State. Edwards, the running back for Michigan, I wasn't real bullish on him. His junior film, I thought it was okay. But then his senior film is good. And there's a lot of buzz about him committing to Michigan today, and for good reason. He's got an extra gear and acceleration and a little more agility this year. So his junior, he's picked it up. Edwards has picked it up. He's a 4-star running back. I wasn't sure before, but he looks good. So across the state, across the country, linebacker from Nevada, linebacker from Alabama, defensive end from Tennessee, corner from Maryland. So you're going to these states and getting different positions. 2 DBs from Ohio. In Texas, you got a quarterback and a tight end. Got a little bit of a Tom Izzo voice going on right now. New Jersey offensive lineman and a running back. Michigan junior college offensive lineman, defensive end, defensive tackle, offensive tackle, running back. So 2 offensive linemen from Michigan. Interesting. Florida, 2 defensive backs. Interesting that your 4 defensive backs actually got 5 defensive backs, but 2 from Florida, 2 from Ohio. I'm going to zip through this real quick, and then we're going to call it a signing day. I'm looking for my water. Hope I don't break anything. All right. What do we got here? Nolan Schroeder asks, is there a timeline for when Pelei Nateote will announce? It's a good question. I've not heard. But I would imagine he would want to get here for spring semester, which begins in January. So I'm guessing soon. Again, thanks a lot for Tom Kelly. And the personal sponsorship. It's awesome. Happy holidays to Tom Kelly. Big Will says, I hope they can keep Estime. Mr. Bowman says, hello, all from very snowy Harper Woods. Gordon Tenona says, when is the last day of the early signing period? I don't know. I never know that. I should, but I don't. Paul Greishop says, now if Mel Tucker can get Arch Manning, he will put the Spartans program light years ahead. Can you believe he can get him away from the SEC? he gets there, so much talent will follow the Spartans. No, I don't think he's getting Arch Manning. Hate to disappoint you on that one. 313 Hitman says, Beekman better cough up crazy bread for that Paul Gryshop. Justin Thin says, thanks for the shout out to Tom. Stephen X says, if we don't get Estime, who's plan B? I don't know if there's another plan B for running back. They've got Prim. I don't know how much is left out there. You know, last year at the buzzer, Michigan State brought Eaglin in from Texas. I've not heard much about him. You have to hope that everything is good with Elijah Collins. Can he make a comeback next year? I don't know. But on one hand, they've got, 5 scholarship guys at running back right now? But in this day and age, how many of those guys are going to be leaving? And I'm concerned about the revolving door, the nature of the revolving door in college football. Might be good for the kids, might be good for some kids. I think it's going to hurt a lot of kids. They're just going to cut and run and leave a potentially good situation behind for something that they think is greener grass, and they're just going to run off cliffs like lemmings. I think that's going to happen to a lot of people. Tom Izzo says he thinks that the immediate transfer thing, which is going into effect, it's getting passed now for next year. He thinks it'll hurt way more players than it helps, and I agree. Now, there's going to be some players that want to help their situation, and that's fine. So transferring, I've always thought, okay, sit out a year. I know that there's other sports where you don't have to sit out, and that's wrong too. They should all have to sit out. That's why that rule was in place, so that you don't have, players changing teams like AAU basketball every month. And players might not care. Maybe they shouldn't, and maybe you don't care. Maybe I don't care. But I think fans will get a little bit sick of it. But there'll be some fans that'll be like, okay, what transfers can we get? And maybe it'll create more interest. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll be the opposite. Maybe it'll create more fan interest. I don't know. Stephen X says, my guess is Mangum transfers if they don't get Estime. That's a possibility. That's a possibility. That could happen. Mangum, sophomore at Colorado, didn't get much work this year. Had about 400 yards last year as a true freshman. Went to Cass Tech. His family lives in the Detroit area. That could happen. Spartan Dude 313 says Michigan State is going to be one of the most physical teams in the Big Ten after the next cycle. Bold prediction. Might be right. Rob South says he had a Power 5 offer I read today. I don't know what you're talking about. Detroit Spartan talking about cheese dip. LS cheese. Okay, Stephen X is saying, who loves LS cheese dip? Detroit Spartan saying, I do. I do too, man. The cheese dip is the real deal. The real deal. Got the cottage cheese in there. Got the cumin in there. I don't know what else, but it's got a lot of love. There's a lot of love in the cheese dip at LS. And we went a couple times this summer when things opened up. Out in the open air. I think, you know what? The first time I returned to a restaurant when things reopened in June-ish. Yeah, I was on lockdown until June. Not afraid to admit that. And LS Teco is the first place me and the lady went and had a wonderful time. Had some cheese dip too. Detroit Spartan says, and I think they sell the cheese dip over at the farmer's market over there by Meridian Mall. They also bring in some of that smoked whitefish dip from the Mackinac area. That's no joke. That's no joke at all. And you can't get that just anywhere because it doesn't keep real well. So they hustle that stuff down I-75. Smoked whitefish dip, the real deal. It's one of the good things about Mackinac Island. All those restaurants on Mackinac Island, they've got different kinds of smoked cheese dip. Usually warm smoked cheese dip. It's a wonderful thing. And that's one of the reasons Lake Huron is still number one in our Great Lakes Power Rankings. I know the Lake Michigan people are mad at me. I'm getting hate mail from Chicago, Muskegon, Milwaukee, Green Bay, Traverse City, Pentwater. All the people are mad at me because we've got Lake Michigan number 2, and we've had Lake Michigan number 2 on our Great Lakes Power Rankings for close to 2 years. All right, let's see. We're about done. When I start talking about stuff like that, we're about done. Stephen X says, 20 years SpartanMag member. First time with a video chat combo. Love it. Thanks, Stephen X, Appreciate having you around for 20 years as a Spartan Mag subscriber. Really do. Now I'm at the part where my microphone broke down. Got it straightened out. Yeah, Corey did a great job. Mr. Bowman saying, I like Moore. Darn UCLA, unreal. Yeah, UCLA got a good one. Josh Moore out of Atlanta. 6'2", good hitter. Michigan State made a run at him, didn't get him. Detroit Spartan said, Grigsby turned out to be a big loss, and there wasn't some magical player waiting to take a spot. Grigsby was a good safety, hard-hitting safety in Louisiana, 3-star. Another one of those guys from Louisiana that if he were in Michigan, he'd be a 4-star. I'd say the same thing about Logan Diggs, the running back who's committed to Notre Dame. Grigsby, Michigan State had him for a little while, decommitted, ends up at Purdue. And watching the Big Ten Network signing day show today, they had Grigsby listed pretty much as like their best recruit this year, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't doubt that. Listed as a 3-star. I think he's a 4-star talent. Good hitter. And you're right, they lost him as a safety. And he decommitted. AJ Kirk was already committed when Grigsby decommitted, so it was Kirk and Grigsby were the safeties, and that would have been a lethal tag team back there. You're right, that was a loss, and I never got a real good explanation on why he decommitted or what went on there. I don't know what would have changed in his mind about Michigan State. Maybe it was the Kirk commitment. Maybe the Kirk commitment upset his apple cart a little bit. Brad Fishenko says, any update on Shakur Brown and Naquan Jones, and will they play on Saturday once they've declared for the NFL? I suspect they're not going to play. I think once you've made that decision, you are done. And you make that decision because you're ready to leave your team because you want to protect yourself and your commodities for the NFL, and they're really not playing for anything. They're playing for a bowl game, but like I said, I'm not sure they want to play in a bowl game. So I think they're announcing that they are going pro NFL. They didn't say opt out. They said NFL. I don't know if they got together with the coaches and decided to word it that way. So why wouldn't Michigan State come out and say, okay, thank you for your service. We'll trudge on without you. Why would Michigan State not say that? Well, they don't want Maryland to know that number 29 is not going to be out there. They want them to prepare that 29 might be out there. Shakur Brown and Naquan Jones. And Michigan State's going to miss both of them. I mean, there's plenty of downs this year when Naquan Jones and Shakur Brown were the best players on the field. Not every single down, but there were downs, as everyone knows. I mean, they think they're NFL prospects. So, yeah, I don't know what Michigan State's going to look like because like Detroit Spartan said, and I don't know what Maryland looks like, but these players are worn out, and this is a tough sport. This isn't golf where you can just, I'm not saying golf's not difficult, but you can play it. You don't have to, you're not taking on repeated collisions. There's no blunt force trauma in golf. You can play golf when you're sick of golf. You can't play football when you're sick of football. I'm not saying you can play great golf, but you can play something that looks like golf. If you don't want to play football, you end up playing something that doesn't look like football. Looks like flag football. But I shouldn't talk about that. I've got great respect for the players. I'm concerned about them is what I am. Mr. Boneman says, Big Will says, how many players do you expect to get from the portal? Well, they've got Russo already. I don't know how much scholarship room they have. But, Tucker was saying in the summer that he expected to have a 25-man class. Now he's drawn back from that a little bit and said today that sometimes he doesn't want to say how many scholarships they expect to hand out because that can put you at a competitive disadvantage a little bit. If other teams know how many scholarships you've got in your hand, that can change things. Or not really change things, but it can tip off an opponent as to how hard you might be going after somebody or not going after somebody. So if he still thinks, at some point he thought that he had room for 25. If he still thinks that, then that would mean they've got 6 left. That might mean some other players might get escorted to the transfer portal. I don't know. So I've always thought that transfer portal numbers It's only been around for a little while, but I think like 3 or 4 is a big number. 2 is like, okay, 3 is pushing it. What did Rutgers have? 6 or 7? 8? I don't know how many. They had a lot. I don't expect that much. I don't think there's room for that. People talking like 10, 15. I don't think there's any way that happens. I'd be shocked. But I was a little bit shocked about the quarterback news today. Victory for MSU. Smag dude says, my cat just puked. I told him to put the cat outside this a while ago. Mr. Bowman says, we need defensive lineman and linebacker, not that many defensive backs, talking about the portal. I'd agree with that. Remember, they're only playing 2 linebackers, rotating 3. They're not playing 3, rotating 5 anymore. They're playing 2, rotating 3. You know that. Doors Fan 91 says the linebacker from Western Michigan and Georgia look like instant starters. It's a good point. I've not looked at that linebacker from Western. Some of you know him better than I have. I've not gone back and watched him on film. I only watched Western Michigan once this year, maybe half the game against Central Michigan, and that game was just a roller derby. It was an eraser relay. I mean, there was no defense in that game. I'll have to go back and look to see what he did. Just about to wrap it up. Let me see what we have here. Talking about linebackers still. Hard Knocks 27 says, why would you want to go to a bowl game? It's about reps. Why would you not want to go to a bowl game? It's about reps. Guys get more reps, more film to evaluate. Practice does not compare to a true game. That's true, and I've been saying that all year, but I've kind of changed my tune on that in the last few days after hearing how spent the players are. Detroit Spartan says, I'd be shocked if Russo's a draft pick. Shocked. And that kind of shocked me too when I heard that from a former coach of his. What do we have here? Stroker Ace asks, where was Russo ranked coming out of high school? He was a 3-star. He was like number 18 in Pennsylvania. I mean, he went to Temple. So he was recruited, but not like by the bigger programs. All due respect to Temple, there were many years in the last couple of years where they would have beaten Michigan State. Like when Rule was there, I'm sure they would have beaten Michigan State in 2016, in all due respect. All right, we're going to zip through this. I think we're about done. Lou Rawls, the singer, same voice, talking about Ron's voice. Tum Tum. All right. Hayden Fisher says, too bad Brantley is not enrolling early. Yeah, I mean, if Shaq Brown doesn't play this weekend at corner, you've got Kalen Gervin, but he's been a little banged up. You'd have Angelo Gross moving out to corner, perhaps, from nickel to corner. You can move Angelo from nickel to corner and Dowell full-time to nickel. And then at safety, you got Xavier Henderson and Trey Person if he plays this weekend. Not heard anything from him. I don't know who else is back there at safety if you don't have Dowell. If Dowell's moved, Tate Halleck, I don't really remember who that next safety has been when I've watched warm-ups. I've written it down somewhere. Safeties. I know I'm forgetting somebody. But it gets thin really quick. I'm kind of addicted to this. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. I probably should have ended the show a few minutes ago. But I want to make sure I don't disregard some good questions. Appreciate you guys posting things. James Quick Willis says, where's Tucker's connections with the SEC and SEC players? Oh, talking about transfers? Could get that kid from Georgia, right? I'm sure there's a connection there. James Quick Willis says, if Tucker's connection with the SEC is so good, how come Michigan State does not have any commitments from the South? I think somebody said they did have some from the South. 2 from Florida, 1 from Alabama, 1 from Tennessee. That's more than usual. If you want to count it, 2 more from Texas. If you count Texas as the South. It's not SEC South. Well, I guess it is with A&M there now. Hayden Fisher pointing that out now. Okay, James Willis says he's not read everything. All right, James Willis, we have to get you up to speed. We're your study guide. Appreciate that you're here. Hayden Fisher also saying, I already have a commitment from the Georgia class, from Georgia in the 2022 as an offensive lineman. He's got some work to do, in my opinion. Big guy, junior film, a little bit of a waist bender. Don't tell anybody I said that. James Willis says, I joined 4 days ago, so I'm just getting into the groove here. All right, good. Great, glad to have you. You'll be one of these hopeless experts here pretty soon, like a lot of us. Detroit Spartan says, I don't think anyone thinks Thorne is a lock to be a starter in 2021. I guess that's the rub here. I mean, I'm wrong, but every time I see Thorne play, I'm like, oh, he's starting next week. And then he doesn't. Then I'm like, oh, he's starting next week. And then he did, and every time he's looked better. He's surprised me each time. I thought he's looked really good. I'm not sure what is missing there. But I was coming out of last week thinking, okay, he's starting next year. It's his situation. But then they bring in Russo. Russo's got talent. Now you're going to have a spring competition. It's going to be intriguing. James Willis says, I have more faith in Tucker's scouting ability than I do Harbaugh. Interesting point. I mean, well, they've both, yeah. All right. Got dead air going. I apologize for that. I think I'm getting tired. Detroit Spartan says, that's the $1 million question, Comp. What was the $1 million question? I just don't think we have to see him versus Division I competition at a minimum. I don't know what you're talking about here. Transfer quarterback, Detroit Spartan says, transfer quarterbacks can be absolutely toxic to existing quarterback rooms depending on personalities. Not saying Russo will be, but I've seen it happen. I have too. And you're right. So, I mean, that's a gamble a little bit, you know. You've got Peyton Thorne. You've got some backups. You bring this guy in. He might not even beat out Peyton Thorne. What if he doesn't beat out Peyton Thorne? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to watch, but it's also a little bit of a tender situation. Stroker A saying Lombardi, tight end. Lombardi says Detroit Spartan says Lombardi does not have the foot speed to play tight end in this offense. Is he slower than Tyler Hunt? All right, I think we're about done. Shout out to Julian Peterson from Doors Fan. Now they're talking about favorite Spartans. All right. I think it's about it. Cartero 917. Looks like he's checking out. Matt McLeod's got a good point. He says, by recruiting nationally, will these guys, these national recruits, understand the U of M rivalry? Love the size of these recruits, but I wonder if they will have that hatred for Michigan that they need to have. That's a great point. And no, they won't. They will not have that natural hatred. They'll learn to gain that hatred. By the time he was gone, Brian Lewerke had it. I remember talking to Jared Magaha about this. He was a recruit from Tennessee early in the D'Antonio days. And that was back, I think, was it Rich Rodriguez or getting into the Hoke era? The usual stuff where, you know how it is, where Michigan gets all this advanced credit and self-congratulations, which is a term I heard in Sean Windsor's article today, which I thought was a good way to phrase it. But he's an outsider from Tennessee, Jared Magaha. And I was talking to him. He was at summer camp. We're watching recruits, hanging around. And everybody's talking about Michigan. It's July because Michigan, somebody was being handed the July Heisman. And Magaha's like, man, it's in a southern accent. He's like, it's just unreal. I've never seen anything like it. So that's a Tennessean. Took a couple of years, and he caught wind of it. That's different than growing up around here and everything that goes with it. You're right. It's an excellent point, and they are going to lose that. there'll be some on the team that'll have it. And watch Michigan State next year. They're going to recruit. They'll have Michiganders. What do they have this year? 5 Michiganders? 3, 4, 5, 6. No, 5. They have 5 plus Rayshon Benny. They have 6. So that'll be enough. Then you'll have the walk-ons and everything. Next year, it's a good year in the state of Michigan. I think Tucker's going to get off to a better start in the state of Michigan because he'll have more time. 6 is still a kind of a high. It's a good solid number of Michiganders, actually. So I'm not going to go out and say they're going to have more Michiganders. It's probably going to be around 6 every year, I'm guessing. They'll have the hatred for Michigan. That's one of the good byproducts of recruiting in Ohio also, because those guys that might have grown up Buckeye fans, they've got the hatred for Michigan too. But it's a good point. DoorsFan91 says, I hope Michigan State can land Tatum by the spring game. That's Dylan Tatum, running back / wide receiver from West Bloomfield. A lot of quickness on him. Hayden Vischer says, Tatum likely will not announce until late summer and fall. Hayden Vischer always has the answers, and I like it. We need that. Chris Trainham says, great show tonight, Comp. After 7 hours, I made it through my review of that 156-page surgical intervention document. You, Corey, Paul, and Justin got me through. Surgical intervention document. Okay. Gordon Tonona says Mackinac Island needs more taffy shops. Is it taffy or toffee? It's taffy, right? And it's saltwater taffy because they make it with salt water? Because there's no salt water around there, if you haven't noticed. I'm more of a gluten-free fudge guy. And yes, I am a fudgy. And you might see I might show up with a fudgy t-shirt one of these days. I'm owning it. Detroit Spartan says, relax on golf, Comp. I know, you're touchy. That's not where I was going with that. I got great respect for the physical and mental test of golf and the man versus man and man versus field. Not saying that at all. It's okay. It's okay. X Buckets for Life says, we will be okay. We need to play defense on Saturday. Defense got a little haywire against Penn State, didn't it? Not sure what was going on that quarterback power on 3rd and 2 after they just run, it's 3rd and 4 actually. They just run quarterback power on 3rd and 2, 4 downs earlier. 0 safety, man-to-man. They were inviting that 31-yard touchdown run by the quarterback. I'm sure they'd like to have that one to do over. Nobody was really beaten physically on that play. Maybe Trey Person could have squeezed it in tighter on the edge gap. But when you give up a touchdown without anyone getting beaten physically, it was a structural thing. And you have structural busts on defense. You have physical and you've got mental. That was not a physical. No one was beaten physically. And that's a tough way to give up 31 yards and a touchdown and a 10-7 lead. All right. These just go on forever. All right, all done with that. A lot of posts tonight. Sorry, it took me a while to get through those. It's now 11:26. We've been doing this for 3 hours. Would you get a hold of yourselves? Can we all get a hold of ourselves here? Do we have no lives? We got a life. Part of our life is Spartan football. And on signing day, we like it a little bit. And it's snowing in East Lansing. We got Beaumont Tower. It's like a Budweiser commercial. The old Budweiser commercials with the Clydesdales. You know what I'm talking about. The old school. We got snow falling in East Lansing. In the meadow, we're going to build a snowman. It's going to be great. So we want to wish happy holidays from all of us at SpartanMag.com to all of you. Happy holidays. And this won't be the last time you see us. We'll be back. We'll be back after the Maryland game, if there is a game. Sounds like there is. I'd heard some stuff from some sources that things might be going haywire at Maryland. But it's Wednesday and it has not happened. I think the game is on. So post-game call-in show right here, Saturday after the game. Check your local listings. The following Saturday, we're going to be in the beautiful air-conditioned Cobo Arena. No, we won't. But you know what I'm talking about. That's a reference. That's a thinker for some people that grew up in the Detroit area in the 70s. George Cannon. Anyway, SpartanMag.com. If you're not already a subscriber, go check it out. If you're cheap, 30-day free trial. Check it out. You'll get addicted, and you'll be going back to Robinson and Thind and those guys trying to get your supply all the time, and it's a lot of fun. It's a great online community. Thanks for checking us out. Hope you had a good signing day. Go to SpartanMag.com for continuing coverage. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com since the 1990s. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. From East Lansing, Michigan, Spartan Mag Live, SpartanMag.com.